All right, we'll get this started. This is January 18th, OLCC Commission meeting. And Adam, would you take the roll, please?
Of course. Commissioner Curran,
Here.
Commissioner Floyd,
Here.
Commissioner Japong Porter,
We'll wait till she comes in. Go ahead.
Okay. Commissioner Hayes,
Here.
Commissioner Miletus,
Here.
Chair Doherty.
Here. So we have a quorum. We need to, the first item on the agenda is approval of the commission meeting minutes from December 14th, 2023. Do we have any discussion on that? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
Chair,
Commissioner,
I move to approve the December 14th, 2023 commission meeting minutes as written.
we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Floyd and seconded by Commissioner Hayes. And with no further discussion, any other comments? Then Adam, would you call the roll, please? We have a motion to approve the minutes as written from December 14th meeting.
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Japong Porter,
Keep going, Adam.
Commissioner Hayes,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Chair Doherty.
Yes, the motion passes. Jeremiah, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. As a way of remembrance, my name is Jeremiah Brickhouse. I have been the CIO here at OLCC for the past 3 months. I wanted to thank Chairman Doherty and the rest of the commission for allowing me to come and introduce a company called Computronics to the commission this meeting this morning. They're going to be doing a demonstration. Computronics is a Canadian-based company with a local office in Denver, Colorado. They are our preferred vendor who is assisting us getting the Cannabis Alcohol Management Program installed, better known as CAMP. The system is designed for the alcohol beverage control, which has functionality for licensing, permits, hearings, and enforcement. Computronics has a strong track record at implementing this product in many states and Canadian provinces. So with that, I will turn it over to the Computronics team.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Carson Stovey. I'm with Computronics. I had a great little introduction prepared, but after that, I don't know what else I can say. So I might just leave it at that. And I was told that I have about 15 to 20 minutes to give you guys a quick overview of the CAMP system. We've been working on this project with OLCC for well over a year, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a really great project to work on, and we are actually just coming up to go live for phase 1 here in March. So March 18th, phase 1 is going to go live. So the intent of this demonstration is to give you a snapshot, a quick little sense of what the system looks like, so you have some context about what CAMP. Like when someone talks about CAMP, you actually be like, okay, I have something to associate that with. I can see it. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. CAMP is built. It's a software system. It's in the cloud. We have 2 different portals that we'll be looking at. Today, we're going to focus primarily at the customer, the public-facing portal, so you get a sense of what the public is going to see. There is a robust staff side as well, where staff will go in and they'll be actually processing and reviewing the information that's been provided through that customer and public-facing side of things. So without any further ado, then I'm going to share my screen and give you guys, again, a bit of a sense of what CAMP looks like, okay? So if you could somebody could give me a quick heads up. Can you see my screen? Yes, perfect. Okay. This is the CAMP landing page. So when somebody from the public is navigating, through the OLCC website and is looking for information about how to apply for a license, or maybe it's a licensee who's now coming into the system for the first time to view their existing license information that's been brought over as part of data migration. This would be the first page they see when they navigate away from the OLCC website. So this is our landing page. You'll note that the primary focus is this login section where you can log in and or register. That said, I also want to draw your attention to these 3 searches at the bottom. So we have not logged into any system at this point. So this is public facing, and we have a search for licenses, a search for packaging, and a search for labels. The goal of these searches is to provide the public with as much information as reasonably possible, so that if you're looking for a specific license, you can go in and you can see licenses that have been approved by the OLCC. So you can see that there are a variety of search criteria. Just to demonstrate this really quickly, I'm going to go look for a laboratory license. I'm going to pick the city of Portland. When we search that, again, you can see that there are a variety of licenses that display. We can see the license number, the status of that license, the licensee, trade name, premises address, effective date, and expiration date. Just a note, this is our preview environment, so the data in here is not real data. This is all data that we've just populated over the past year or two to test things out. But again, so you can get a sense of what this will look like. And then again, some details, like for example, addresses. There are settings in the system where OLCC can manage whether or not these items are displayed to the public or not. So for example, for some license types, we may not want to display where people are located. So there are settings that allow the OLCC to manage that. Going back real quick, I just want to show the other searches. So for packaging and labeling for recreational marijuana labels, if you're looking for a package, this search will show the approved child-resistant packaging. So packages that the OLCC has already been through and approved, users can go and find that list. Search by package type is the easiest here. But if you know a manufacturer or a package ID, you can see that. Anytime that there's a link in here, we can click that to see additional information. So I can see this package. It's been approved by the OLCC. The status is active. I've got a description and then some different variants. And then at the bottom, I have the child-resistant certification. So again, if I was going to use this packaging, I can go and validate that this has been, 1, approved by the OLCC, 2, see that there is a valid certification on it as well. Okay, lastly, the label search, similar in nature. Again, I'm going to search by label type, but you can see the different labels that have been approved by the OLCC. Like our address feature we were talking about before, the OLCC has the ability to manage whether or not images are displayed here for specific labels. You click into a label, again, we're always going to show the status, so if it's active or if it's expired. And then individuals from the public could go through it and view different variants and packages that are related to each label and go ahead and look at and validate, what am I seeing on the shelf? Is it matching what has been approved by the OLCC? Okay, so that's without logging in. If you were going to, for the first time coming into camp and you want to register, you click that login register button. You click the sign up now at the bottom, and we would do some email verification to make sure that your email is valid and create an account for you. For the sake of time today, I'm going to go and log in with a user that I already have. Once you log into the system, you'll note that there are a few different sections on the home page. We have licensing, packaging and labeling, and certification education. Certification and education is phase 3 of our project. Because this is our demo environment, we've been working on that, so it's displaying here. But today I'm going to focus on licensing and packaging and labeling. If we click into licensing, you'll see that automatically we have actions, select an action right at the top. So most people, if they're coming in, they're applying for something. They can also create a comment on an application if they want to. As we scroll down, we have dashboards. We have an actions required dashboard, a licenses dashboard, and a comments dashboard. The actions required dashboard is going to display the immediate things that me as a licensee, what do I have to do right away? So in my example here today, I've got 2 applications that are displaying. The first one says the action required is to submit the application, and the second one, I have to pay some fees. So in that first one, I've started it and I need to go in and actually just complete it, get to the OLCC. That second one, the OLCC has already been and approved it, and I now need to go in and pay my license fee. Other actions that would display here, any expiring licenses, if information has been requested of me from the OLCC, that would display in this grid, any payments recently expired, etc. Also, then there will be email notifications as well to me as the applicant. So I will get a notification in my email that I have to go into the portal and provide some information or continue with some actions. Our licenses dashboard, so flipping over there. Here we have two different grids. So at the top, we have our issued licenses, and below that we have applications. So we're always going to, in CAMP, we're always looking at it and going, what does the applicant give the OLCC? So we have that application, and then what does the OLCC provide back, the license? We have these two different directions of information, if you will. So at the top, we have what's the OLCC giving back, and at the bottom, we have what is the licensee or applicant providing to the OLCC. And again, you'll see a couple of them that were in my actions required grid display here as well. So I've got that 16110, that's my new application that I need to submit. And that 16114, that's the one I need to pay. And then you can see that there's one here in the middle that's approved. So this approved one is tied to this license in the top grid. Like everywhere else, if I click on a link, I can go and see additional information. So now I'm actually looking at my recreational retailer license that I've applied for and that's been approved by the OLCC. If I logged in and I was an existing licensee, I would see the migrated licenses just like this in the system. I can see that the status is active. If I want to take an action, I want to amend my license, or I want to apply for an endorsement, I can do that. And also, if I'm within the renewal window, I could click the renew button and start a renewal application. So right now, this license is not within the renewal window, so that option is not available to me. As I scroll down, I can see details about my specific license, the premises, and at the bottom, I have a document section where if I click this, I can actually download my certificate, my license certificate, print that out, put that up in my establishment. So this is looking at the license. I want to make sure we take a few minutes to peek at an application. So rather than if I click the apply button here, I can go and apply and start a brand new application. You can see that in our environment here right now. We're talking about phase one, so we're talking about only recreational marijuana licenses. However, we've been configuring, working with the OLCC to get all of our phase two, all of our liquor licenses in here as well. If I go to the cannabis section here, you can see all the different recreational marijuana licenses that I could apply for. Again, for the sake of today, I'm going to go look at an application that I've already started so that we don't have to spend a whole bunch of time filling in all the details. So this is an application I was working on. You can see that, again, at the top, very clear. It's a new application. I have a file number for it. The status for my application is new. And then we have these green little dots, these nodes across the top. These are like the pages of my application, if you will. I can click between them. You'll note that many of them are green. When I've completed it and all the required information has been entered, I get that green check mark. If I have not, so for my licensee, for example, it's going to stay gray until I complete that, and I cannot submit this application until all the required information has been provided. Okay, so again, there's different steps here. We have a getting started step, which is where we specify some of the basic information. So again, if I'm applying for endorsements, I'm agreeing to the personal information collection, specifying what kind of licensee, a new or existing one. If I've been in the system before, if I've been approved before, I can click the existing button and not have to enter in all of the details about my licensee. So again, we're trying to make it easier on applicants, not having to rekey a bunch of information. We have some initial questions. These are typically questions that are blocking questions. So if you don't answer these ones the right way, we're going to say, hey, maybe you're not eligible for this application, or maybe you're not eligible for this license type. Maybe you should go look at a different one. But the goal is to direct people as quickly as possible to the right license type. On my licensee page, this is the one where I'm missing some information. I didn't put in my SOS, it's just registry number. But we collect a variety of information about our licensee, including the licensee type. So whether or not you're a corporation, an LLC, sole proprietorship, so on and so forth. And the questions changed slightly depending on what's selected. I've gone ahead and entered my corporate structure in here as well. So you can see I've got all of my interested parties in here for my different organizations. The way this is set up, it allows us to go many tiers down. We have some organizations that go down to 0.1% ownership structure, and they navigate this and enter everything in here. We ask questions about the premises. We have a section where OLCC can configure a variety of additional questions under different headings to make sure that all the information that is required is captured. These questions are responsive, so some of them will have different actions related to them. And then I have some questions about the endorsement I applied for as well here. Lastly, I have a document step where we have some required documents. So those ones have a check mark beside them, meaning that if I do not upload a document with this type related to it, I can't submit my application. OLCC can configure sample forms. So if, for example, if I'm looking at my land use compatibility statement, I can go ahead and download the form here, fill it out, and then upload a copy of that to my application below here. You can just drag and drop files into this section from your computer or click the plus button to upload files. I've already gone ahead and put mine in here so that we don't have to spend the time doing that together. And once I click next, I get to the end where I have an application summary of some of the details that I've entered. I have fees calculated, a declaration, and once I've done that, I can pay and submit my application. This is we push out to a credit card processor. This one is not a real credit card processor. This is just our environment to make sure we are showing how that would work. Once paid, we get a transaction approval number and a notification at the top if the transaction went through. That is persistent, so people have to go ahead and exit it. The goal there is making sure there's an action tied to it. People are notified and they have to take an action. I can download my receipt and I can go ahead and see my application. If I go back to my dashboard really quickly, I can now see that that application is moved off of my actions required grid. I no longer have that action to submit an application. If I go to my licenses tab and scroll down, I can see that my application has now changed from having a status of new to in review, meaning that it's with the OLCC for review. I will have also got a notification, an email notification from the OLCC saying, we've received your application and given me some additional information as well. Okay. I'm going to quickly hop over and just move to our packaging and labeling side of things. You'll note that it looks very similar to licensing. Our goal is to make sure there's consistency across the system. So if someone jumps from one module to another, they're going to see that same pattern where the actions are at the top. If you want to apply for a packaging and labeling pre-approval, or if you need to manage your labels, you can do that right from the top. We have that actions required grid, the same as we do in licensing. And if you go to the label side, you can see approved labels at the top and applications that were submitted below. So in this case, I've got 3 different applications and I've got 2 labels that I've submitted. I can click into each label. I can see the details. So you can see the different labels that have been entered in here for this specific, this is an edible Canna Gums. And you can see the package that's related to it as well. So as the owner of this label, I can see all my details. I can also request changes. So if I want to go to the OLCC and I want to amend my label, I can click that button. I can start an application to amend my label and add new packaging, add new variants, so on and so forth. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just go back quickly. Same way we did with licensing. I'm going to jump into a label application, just like that we did with licensing. I've already gone through and entered all the details here. You'll note, again, it functions the same way with our green nodes across the top for each page. It's ordered for more or less the same way, where we have that getting started, where we want to set things up at the front. Our documents are always at the back. If we go to that getting started page, you'll see that this is, again, where we ask a variety of questions to set up the rest of the application. If you change some of these for example, are you adding new packaging? If I click no, and hit next, my application changes and it removes a step. So I no longer have that page in my application, if you will. Okay. So again, our goal is to try and make it as easy as possible for people to move through this application. We ask some questions about the applicant. We collect details about the label and the label variant. So there's 3 variants on this one. We click into the variants, you can see that there are images that have been uploaded, a name, a description. collecting information about the packaging. So if we're adding new packages, we can click the plus button over here to add a new package to our application. If we want to edit the ones that we've already added, we can do that as well. Like licensing, we upload documents that are required. There's only one required here. I put my child resistant certification on here. And then once we get to the end of the application, we again have our summary displaying the different labels that have been applied for, the variants for those labels. You can view them here if you want to go in and see that information. And then lastly, our fees that are associated with what we've selected to apply for. And again, we can pay and submit. Pay with a credit card, and that application will be submitted to the OLCC. Okay. So again, in a nutshell, that would be a quick overview of the customer side of things. I will take a couple minutes and just hop to the staff side. I want to go quickly here to my licensing. Just double check my application number. So this is the staff portal. When people log in for the first time, it's nice and clean, it shows up, it's blanked out like this. What I want to show you today is mostly focusing on the to-do list. That's where staff will work from. So staff from the OLCC, when an application is submitted, depending on how things are configured by the OLCC, staff will see a list like this of all the tasks that are assigned to them. And the to-do list is where people will find the specific tasks that are related to them, navigate to those tasks, and actually complete their work. So you can see in my to-do list, I've got a variety of items. We've got a few different things. We've got scheduled date. So when do I need to work on these? You can see some of them are long past on mine. You can see the process type. The process type is essentially synonymous with task. So what task do I have? Am I reviewing a certification, reviewing a course proposal? So those are kind of phase 3 items. An administrative review for a label application. So we were just talking about label applications, and this is where I could go and do that. Here's a review application for a license. So a new application for a license. There's a variety of features in here that allow staff to manage their workload. You can see that I've got some colors in here. And I just want to clarify, can everybody still see my screen? Okay, good. Someone was commenting it may have frozen, so I'm hoping you can still see it. If not, I hope you're enjoying listening to me talk. So you can see that I'm using these different colors, and I can sort by these different tabs. So I find that we use a very similar software within our organization to manage some of our workloads. I find this extremely useful. I tag a whole bunch of things with different colors so that I know what I'm working on or things that I don't need to pay attention to. There's a variety of filters that allow staff to filter based on what's current. So only the things I need to look at today, only things that are overdue. So if I'm behind on things, I can just see that. Or if I want to look at a specific job or a process type, so if I want to see, okay, only the new license applications, I can filter my list by that or by a specific task type so that I can start to really drill down to what am I focusing on here. Okay, and then from here, staff could continue to work. Every time there's a little green circle, they can navigate between items in the system. So I can navigate to this new application that was submitted on the customer portal, and I could start working on processing this and reviewing all the information and doing the different checks that I would as a staff member do to validate whether or not this entity is licensable, whether this premise is licensable, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is just a very quick overview, high-level overview. I hope that it at least whets your appetite and you get a sense of what CAMP is. And I will leave it at that unless anyone has any questions or anything that I can answer at this point.
This is great, huge improvement.
Chair, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you, Carson. That's what I was saying. Appreciate your presentation.
My pleasure. So thank you.
Having spent 20 minutes this morning on trying to solve some subscription thing online, it was just very frustrating. But do you get a phone number if somebody can't solve the problem in there?
Well, that's a great question. So there will be, on the customer side of things, there is a contact link. that will direct out to an OLCC webpage. So OLCC will manage whatever different contacts they want on there. And there is a third-party support as well, so people can call and get help with how the software works.
Okay. And is there when somebody new is coming in, is there an FAQ section in there for commonly asked questions, or?
That's a great question. I might direct that one to the OLCC. I believe they are working on that and putting that together as well. And so the way we focus the software is we try to build a product that is configurable and manageable by the agency as much as possible, because things change. I worked in the public sector and government for several years, and I noted we'd build something one way and then we'd have different legislation, a different rule, different statute, and suddenly we're going a different direction. So our goal is to leave it as flexible as possible for the OLCC to manage. So.
Thank you.
Chair?
Commissioner Floyd?
Here. Carson, amazing job. Great job. This has been a long time coming. And just congratulations on the look and the feel of it. Just seems very user-friendly. So congratulations. I do have a quick question. At times we have issues with permittees working under expired permits, and often this is just accidental. Will this send out notifications to permit holders when their permits up for it's close to expiring?
Yes. So the system right now, as it sits, is configured to have up to 4 notifications. So there'll be 4 separate notifications that get sent out at different timeframes. And I believe one of the changes that we're still making before go live is that we would essentially set that to an unlimited number of notifications. So the OLCC could manage and say, do we want to notify an applicant 4 times, 6 times, 8 times, however many times you want them to be notified at different intervals with different messages, pre and post. So if you could have a message that says, your license expired 10 days ago, you have 20 days to renew if you want to renew, and you're operating on expired license. You could have that whole messaging set up in there as well. So
wonderful.
Short answer is yes.
Hopefully that'll mitigate some of that. That's great. Again, Carson, good job. Thank you for the demonstration.
Thank you all.
I'm going to follow up on that just a little bit. Would Commissioner Floyd, if let's say a licensee wanted to check on their permittees and check their licenses, and do they have access to that?
Good question.
That's a really good question. So that is kind of a phase 3 piece of it. And the software allows for that. Yes, there is a piece where the OLCC would have to determine, again, we're still working through that, how much of that are we implementing, how much of that are we going to use, and how much, there's some direction there to still be sorted out.
So it's possible. And if the notification goes out to the permittee, I'm guessing, would it be able to also go out to the licensee that they notify one of their permittees is coming up for renewal or is beyond renewal?
That might be difficult, Chair, because that's such a fluid thing,
Oh, okay. All right.
Permittees will go from, not all the time. Sometimes there is loyalty, but sometimes it is a fluid thing, and they might, because they take their permit with them.
With them, yeah. Okay. All right.
But that is a good question, and that would be, I would strongly suggest having that transparency between the licensee and being able to log in and see if they're operating with a,
Yeah. One other thing too, even up the supply chain for like distributors, before the distributor can deliver, they have to know that the license is valid. And so perhaps we can look at that both for the entire supply chain and for the permittees. But I know, I like to Kiana's point, that there is not always loyalty and folks jump around on the permittee side. But in terms of the licensee side, if a distributor is going to deliver product, they have to know, that's the point of it. I mean, they have to know the person's license, it's valid. And so that might be a good point of the functionality to look at as well.
Yeah, and that, just to be clear, that very first search that I showed was a public license search, which allows you to see whether or not licenses are valid or not. So if you were a distributor and you were looking for a specific retailer, you could easy enough use that search to just type in their information and verify, do they have a valid active license with the OLCC, yes or no? So that functionality, I think, would be there today.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, it's Craig.
Yes, Craig.
Just a staff comment. We'll have an owner's manual. Basically, we'll have an owner's manual for folks that they'll have instructions that staff is working on how to utilize this to the best. Some of those questions that you Commissioner Floyd and Miletus, those are great questions. So we're working on that, and you can see why we wanted to show this to you all, because as you said, it's a long time coming. Lots and lots of work by your staff has gone into this. And it's just, we wanted, we can talk about camp, but if we just wanted to show you what it is and what the capability is. So so we'll have an owner's manual, and we'll have continued communication about this. But I'm just really, really pleased. I'm pleased with our vendor, obviously great presentation, but also just pleased with all the staff work on this. And it's really going to be, you can see it's going to really move us forward. It'll also, it'll allow some of the things that Kiana, that you're mentioning with tracking licensees and permits, and we'll just, what we have to do, of course, is align our rules and our procedures with this new capability. And so I'm just excited about it, and we wanted to share it with you.
Chair?
Commissioner Porter, Javon Porter, is that you? Yeah. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Come on, Chair. No. So, Director Prinz, will you be able to just take a peek at that manual at some point? If
yeah.
so,
Oh,
when?
yeah. Absolutely. It's not done yet. I think Denise is, several of our staff are working on it. Absolutely. We'll make sure we get it to you. And your questions are great questions, and that's why you have a lot of the staff on listening to your questions, and the chat's disabled. But yes, we'll get it to you once it's done, and I'll check on when that'll be. And I want to give shout outs. We got so many people working on this, and if I tried to name them all while I'm working remotely, I would leave out key folks. But yeah. Jeremiah, if you want to do those, kind of some of those recognition, I think it'd be appropriate. But Faye, yeah, definitely, we'll get you that owner's manual when we've got it. Yep.
Yeah. Excellent presentation, and obviously the staff, everybody's done a ton of work on this. It's so very much appreciated. Any
Jeremiah,
other questions?
You want to close us out?
Yeah, we'll finish that one off, and thank you, Carson.
Yeah, Craig, I will definitely send out a recognition to the team, because there's a lot of people involved with this, a lot of hours going into it. So we appreciate the partnership that we have with Computronics, as well as all the effort that they put into it. So we're looking forward to the go live. I think phase 1's on March 15th.
Look forward to it. All right. Thank you. Excellent. So next, we've got the Cannabis End of the CIAO is going to give us an update. And
Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
Did I miss roll call?
You did miss roll call.
I apologize. I was having technical issues.
That's right. We all were. No worries. Thank you. So is it Jesse or Nikki you're going to present here?
Both of us are going to present.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, Hey, Jesse, how are you?
I'm good. I'm gonna start off. Good morning, everybody, and then pass it to Nikki to close out and correct any mistakes I made, because, you know, that's what we pay her for. She's just that good. So I'm gonna just start by going over the organization a little bit. Even if you already know, I think since we're all getting to know each other, it is helpful to get a little bit of our history and understand where we're coming from. And then I'm going to talk about a survey that we recently sent out to the, my entire list of about 11,000 emails in the state of Oregon, and where the industry is and what it's talking about. And then I'm going to turn it over to Nikki to pull all that together around what we're looking at trying to do this year, and closing everything out. So for the record, my name is Jesse Bonnecue. I'm the Executive Director of the Cannabis Industry Alliance of Oregon. And we were formed from, I think, basically all the major and most active trade associations over the last year and a half have come together and merged. That's including the OCA, ORCA, OIPA, and Farms Inc. We represent over 500 licenses in the state of Oregon, as well as ancillary businesses, and work with staff as well. So we're incredibly large, have our fingers everywhere. Our membership does stretch from border to border, both south and north, east and west. We have members everywhere in the state, and members of all sizes. We have from small mom and pop and single, basically owner businesses, all the way up to the two largest companies in the state of Oregon, Nectar and Wild. Our board is also made up of different size businesses, and there is every type of the 4 key licenses is represented. So retailer, producer, processor, and wholesaler all are represented on our board. We really try and are dedicated to making sure that we will take a good idea from anywhere, any member or non-member in the state that has a great idea. We're here to listen to it, take it, and if it's going to help improve the status quo, go and fight for it. But we also really try and make sure we represent the whole industry and fight for an industry that is diverse, which is to say both diverse in its makeup of ownership and opportunity, but also in size and location. Like, we believe that a healthy industry is one that is, just like any ecology, is diverse, and where small businesses can actually survive and thrive, as well as these large businesses that we hope to see grow. And so to that end, we hold monthly meetings. I make myself available to all of our members, and we really look to get feedback from the entire industry. We take that feedback, we put it into policies, and we go to work trying to fight for reform. Our general mission statement is to fight for and create a thriving and respected cannabis industry. And it's that thriving part that right now is sadly most challenging. I'm sure you guys know the market is very rough. While we've had a downturn in revenue, we've had an increase in licenses. So we have less revenue divided by more people, and it's just very tight. And of course, with federal 280E and other restrictions, it's just an incredibly challenging market. I believe Oregon has the lowest or second lowest wholesale price of product in the country. And it is just a very challenging market. We also have more licenses per capita than any other state, well, except for maybe Oklahoma and New Mexico, but they're also incredibly struggling. So there is it is not a good sign. So we sent out, as I mentioned earlier, a survey to about approximately 11,000 folks. In the first 24 hours, we got an initial 50-ish responses. I was really encouraged to see the diversity of the people responded. It was from CEOs down to bud tenders, as well as people in ancillary businesses that are representing multiple licenses, either as lawyers or as consultants, or and so really had a very broad perspective. To give a sense, 3% of the responses were labs, 13 were processors, 39 percent of respondents represented producers, 18% wholesale, 15% retail, and then the others were, some versions of non-licensed businesses, as well as one research license, which was really nice to see. As I mentioned, there was a very, the size of the companies that responded were immensely varied. So, which was really nice to see. I think, let me look real quick. I have all my data in front of me, so I'm sorry. So 40% of the businesses were 5 or less employees that responded. And 7% of the businesses were between 50 and 100. A couple were more than 100. And then in between, everything in between. So it was a very broad swath, but I was really encouraged to see that a lot of small businesses reached out and responded to this. As far as in relation to, and then the other piece about it, very broad geographic response. So people who responded who had licenses across the state, up and down the valley. And so we really heard from a wide swath of the market. Within that, let me talk about some of the questions we asked. So the very first 2 questions that really got into the temperature of where the market is this question. Thinking of the next 2 years, how concerned are you about the financial health and stability of Oregon's cannabis industry in general, not your specific business? And that was really concerning. It was on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is great and 10 is very concerned, very pessimistic. And 84% of respondents were in between 6 and 10, which is to say concerned, and 52% were 8 or higher. So 52% of the people were way down on the very concerned, with 20% being at 10. So the overall industry is incredibly concerned about the industry in general. People who responded were I asked that exact same question, but about the specific health of their business instead of the market as a whole. And again, there were very few people above 5. So there was basically so there was a slightly better, but about 27% of these people were 8 or higher. And 54% were 5 and higher, with about 46% between 3, 4, and 5. So slightly more positive about their own personal businesses, but still a clear indication that there's a lot of stress in the marketplace. So I hope that sort of lays in those general tones, right? That general feeling flows into this next section. So we asked open-ended questions to get unvarnished responses. I've done some analysis, but this is a very new survey, and we're still collecting, and we'll be collecting more information as it goes. But an initial read through and analysis really shows some very clear trends. One is, the very first question is, we asked about fears. What are the top 4 threats and challenges that your businesses currently face? In other words, what are the issues that keep you up at night? And within that, the number 1 topic that was brought up was licensing, that there's too many licenses, too much product in the marketplace. And so about 50% of the people mentioned that. Nobody said there was not enough licenses anywhere in the survey. And the second question we asked, and I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, because people responded in different places the same way, or, indicating their things, was a question about hope. So we asked 1 question about fear and 1 question about hope. And the hope was, what are the top 4 market opportunities and or policy regulatory reforms that you believe would help your business be more successful? And in that, people really reiterated the no new licenses multiple times. It was the second most popular response. Around a bit more than 50% of respondents said that. The only thing that was more more important to people was opportunities for new economic growth, which is to say social consumption venues, temporary event licenses, farm tours, things that would lead to the opportunity to grow the market. And about, just a little bit more than 50% of people mentioned that. But going back to the fears, so after the fear of too many licenses, the next most common thing we saw was people concerned with accounts receivables, right around 25 to 30% of that, and the increase in the increase in amount of outstanding debt between licensees. So I'm just going to read a couple of quotes real quick. So I want to be respectful of time, but these are just examples that sort of represent the general tone in relation to fears. Too many licenses, overly aggressive OLCC enforcement, high compliance costs, accounts receivable issues. Another one was access to affordable capital, including credit, product from standard financial institutions, accounts receivable issues. I expect the retail cash to get worse before it gets better, with a new tax compliant requirement, shifting regulations, particularly related to misguided testing requirements, 280E continuing to be a massive obstacle to an upside. I think another one, saturated competition and downward pressure on pricing causing the plummet of cannabis in the industry. And somebody else mentioned accounts receivable are taking up to 70% of my time, aggressive enforcement and testing problems. In relation to hopes, I mentioned, again, the no new licensing. I mentioned the deep desire for social consumption. The next most popular one after those was the desire for metric and regulatory easing and reform. And then the other really big one is, and this kind of goes into the AR, is the current tax issue, and people who are experiencing increase in AR as accounts receivable as this new tax reporting requirement is being levied against retailers. And therefore they're privileging paying the state before paying their vendors. So some of the comments here, implementing a statewide ban on terms and consignment, mandatory payment upon delivery, public cannabis events and consumption law reforms, limits on licenses and vertical integration limits, regulatory easing and reforms. Another one, licensing moratorium, consumption venues, consumption events, metric reform, regulatory easing and reform. Some other things mentioned was banking, things like that. I think the other thing that we asked was that was really interesting, and I just want to flag real quick, was we asked, what do they want to see from policymakers and lawmakers outside of new policy or regulatory reform? What do they want to see from the people who are in these positions of power and have a voice? And there was a huge desire for federal advocacy on behalf of the industry in Oregon. And so like a common quote there, pushing for federal and regional efforts to make Oregon a donor state in the cannabis industry, and then respond proactively to allow licensees to expand quickly and effectively. Federal advocacy, actual support of Oregon-based small cannabis businesses, increased industry engagement, and more educational materials for consumers and industry. And then just one final short one, treat the industry the same as all others, nothing more, nothing less. So with some of this, like, I don't want you guys to feel attacked. I do think even if it does say, even if when people are complaining about regulatory enforcement, which they are in this, I think one of the things to take away from that is a question of, is there a perception issue? Is there an education issue? Because the other thing that people really wanted to see from policymakers and leaders and elected leaders was more engagement with the industry. And so I just think that we really should take this as looking at where are the opportunities we can take from this. So I'll be here to answer any questions, but with that, I want to turn it over to Nikki.
Jesse, can I hold you there for 1 second? Excuse me, Nikki, for jumping in here. You've had 500 members of your organization, is that correct?
So we have our members represent over our licensed members represent over 500 licenses. In actual paying members is around 200. Okay.
So I'm just trying to get a feel for how many licensees are out there. How big a portion of the licensees are part of your group?
Well, I think there's about 400 active licenses, and we represent about 500.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Nikki, hello.
Okay, hello, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Director Prinz, and staff. Thank you for having us. Okay. I would just like to pick up the thread. Jesse gave you a lot of really great information, and I'm interested in picking up the thread of partnership, where you kind of left off, Jesse, the opportunities there. If we look back to the beginning of last year in 2023, I would say this industry was aspirational. Perhaps there were still some concerns about market rates. Perhaps we still had some roiling within how to grow this business into new markets. But remember, please, that we introduced two big pieces of legislation. One was exactly reflective of what we heard from the members in this survey. So even before we were an alliance, even before we were a merged trade association, we knew what people were clamoring for out there, and we attempted to deliver it. We had two pieces of legislation. One was basically a red tape reduction act, for lack of a better term, and the other was really about tourism, cannabis tourism, and growth of those new markets that people have identified. Not long into that legislative session, we ran into some political problems, exacerbated by media coverage and unfortunate timing at the crux of the moment we needed to move our bills through the legislative process. And coming to that halt in the legislative process, I think we really sunk back into less of an aspirational position, and frankly, perhaps more into some despondency. So we're looking ahead into the 2024 legislative session, really trying to, I'd like to use a different phrase, but I think that it's apt, stop the bleeding. And as we go into 2024, we're going to have a bill. We're in partnership, speaking of partnerships, with the OLCC, in partnership with the legislature through the House Judiciary Committee. It's going to be House Bill 4121. We've just seen that number released. I've just seen that number released anyway, and the LC was 224, I believe, and it is posted online. And I would just say you all have access to that information, but we'll share some of the information as follow-up from the survey so we can do a little layover. Of that bill, 4121, or what will become 4121, there's a couple of corners of the world that we really feel attached to. We came into this session hoping for a few different priority items. We were successful in achieving two in this bill. One, I think, can be talked about in terms of a longer term discussion and relationship with the commission, with the governor's office, and that's about that advocacy and that federal level alignment. What can we do in terms of exports? What can we do in terms of state by state compact, I suppose we're calling it, or export agreements? So that third one was, going to align definitions and in our sense, going to be able to help flip that light switch should anything change at the national level. So we'd like to see that wrapped up into your advocacy. Director Prinz, you at one point in time had said, hey, we're moving in that direction. And I would just say, take us with you. We can certainly be of service, and we'd like to be a partner with you. You've heard that from the survey loud and clear. So our two corners in the bill itself, one is this dynamic licensing. I don't want to use the term moratorium. That's what we're under now. That's what we need to move away from. A moratorium, this is our second emergency moratorium, and that really is a hamstrung approach to this. That we're simply saying, nope, we cannot consider anything ever. What we want to do is move into a more long discussion, right? Long range, looking ahead, more visionary approach to this, which is tying it to population per capita. Doesn't look exactly the same as the liquor side in terms of ratios for numbers of stores, but it does fit nicely, kind of cozies up with that model. We look at it through different license types, and we're taking a statewide perspective on what those ratios would be. Director Prinz and Mr. Chair, Director Prinz, I know your staff has crunched some numbers. One of the things I've heard in response to this proposal is like, well, hey, that's not free market approach. And I would just say we're not necessarily a free market. As you know, we're a free market in a box. So we need to make sure that we have the opportunity when we can take it to be thinking about that time we're not in the box. Having Oregon product, which has been the darling of the nation for more years than we'll discuss here, but we want to keep that market incumbency. And so that's going to be really important for us to be able to achieve that as we look ahead. What's going to stabilize this marketplace right now? We know it's no new licenses. Eventually, I believe it may be a little while, but I believe with the attrition rates of the businesses we have in the market now, combined with shifts in population, we will hit that equilibrium and be one of the more stable and most productive states that there is. In terms of the product that we're talking about here. The other piece we have is in this bill, I should just say the license, dynamic licensing provision for those of you following along at home with the draft is section 10. The other piece we're watching is section 9. This was our second of the 3 priorities, 2 of which that have made it into the draft, as I alluded to earlier. And this is around products like Wild, products like Grown. We're wanting to see things that are non-intoxicating be able to re-enter the marketplace, the free marketplace, and allowing for people who need to get to sleep, for folks who are using this product, this natural product, as their own form of medicine or relaxation, even a step out of melatonin. This all kind of exists out there. It's a major marketplace that can be captured for our businesses, our common businesses, your licensees, and that would only help to kind of grow out the marketplace as we look again nationally. I know, Mr. Chair, Director Prins, you all have been leading in the Regulatory Affairs Association across the nation here and trying to kind of save that space. Again, we are ready to help. I think we've got a lot of very smart cookies who would like to help discuss what the policy may look like. If you're going to be putting together standards and practices that you'd be forwarding over at CANRA, we want to be able to help there too. So more in terms of the partnership, even though at this point our aspirations may not be as our aspirations may not be as big as they were. I'd like to see us get that back to that point. My optimism is that in 2025, we're going to be able to show back up in Salem, having established a longer term partnership with you all in rulemaking. What's going to happen as we go to implement this bill? The other portions of the bill, I just feel it's important to say, and I think I've spoken a lot at you all, but the other portions of the bill, I feel that it's important to say, you know, we're standing alongside of law enforcement and the judicial agencies and ODA and OLCC regulators as an industry. And I think it's a little bit of a fraught spot for us to be in. I am concerned that we're often wanting to be helpful, but because we're standing so close, we maybe run the risk of also being used as an example. So, you know, around the state and sometimes in Southern Oregon, there's been confusion. Is it legal industry or is it illegal industry? I won't even call it an industry. That's just crime. So we need to make sure that we are, for ourselves, that we as an industry are standing alongside of you, but also wanting to just make sure that you see us as those partners and help us draw the distinction between bad actors and what truly is an industry full of heart. You're looking at a group of businesses that are surviving because they've been able to collect personal loans from friends and families. They're running through their grandmother's inheritance. They are trying to capitalize to make it. Because when the day comes, however far out it may be, Oregon is what should be forwarded throughout the nation. We are, as we like to say, the breadbasket. But really and truly, we've got an opportunity for the next Pinot Noir, the next hazelnut here. And that's an exciting place for us to be in. So maybe I'm a little more aspirational than I led you all to believe. But that's where we should head. And I'll pause. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Any questions for?
Maybe just something to think about. I mean, we've seen some huge successes come out of Oregon. Do you guys ever think about, the membership may want to think about, what do you think it is about those companies that succeeded versus it seems like, you know, the chorus of folks who may not have? What do you think differentiates the two? Jesse?
I mean, I'm sure. Are you asking me what do I think, or do you think that I should go and do some research on that? What was your question?
Why do you think some folks have succeeded and others haven't?
Well, I think that obviously there is one thing that is often, we have internal conversations about, which is access to capital. And that is a really huge defining factor. It's doesn't guarantee you success, as I think someone who looked at Chalice might be able to point to, but it is an incredibly important piece, and that does make it challenging. But obviously there's also skill sets and things like that. Sometimes there's just chance. But I would say even the successful people are incredibly stressed about the Oregon market. Generally speaking, some of the bigger folks are looking at other states and or expanded or have expanding or have expanded already, in part because there are better returns, more financial stability. So I'd say there are some clear winners. I think Wild is the largest edible manufacturer in the country, I believe. Nectar is 40-something licenses. We have Mr. Nice Guy. We have some of these other folks that are playing, that are fairly large operators. But when I talk in Groundworks as well, when I talk to them, they are also struggling. They are also deeply concerned about the marketplace, and they're also coming to ask for some of these reforms because they're trying to create a more stable market in Oregon. And I think that's one of the big concerns is the lack of stability and predictability in our current market, and just the massive price fluctuations makes it hard for people to know how and where to invest in this state. And so I would say, yeah, there's some great folks. They've done really well for themselves, both, through, I'm sure, skill, a bit of luck, and, some key things like access to capital, and having the right people. But even the people who are successful are incredibly stressed, from my conversations.
And specific, we talk a lot about feelings. Specific policies, I think, are the things to focus on because, market's tough, business is tough, any business. And I think, when you focus on real specific, coherent policies, that's where we can make movement versus, fears and hopes and dreams. And I think it's just, a matter of what specifically do we want to get done? Because, the other thing too is I think both of you would admit that it has been a constant evolution since day one, since 2016, of building the system, evolving the system, changing the system. I think every year except for last year, there was momentum that OLCC backed at the legislature, and most of this stuff is legislative. And I do think there's going to be, you're going to have a heavy lift at the legislature. I mean, I think the industry, and then this, I'll just say this frankly, I think that you are definitely speaking for 100% of a segment of the industry, of a segment of the voices. But there are a lot of other voices out there, and what we didn't talk about, or what I thought maybe was going to be presented, is there is movement on the federal level. And that's a challenge as well, because I don't even, what I hear from the industry is some of them are vehemently opposed to Schedule 3. Other folks are very excited. From the investment standpoint, I think people are now making phone calls. They're looking to come back to Oregon. They're looking to deploy capital. They're looking at deals again, in a sense, that I haven't seen since, 2016, 2015. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But I do know there's momentum. I do know there's optimism in some segments of it. And I do know that had the system not been as open in the beginning, we wouldn't have seen some of these huge successes come out of Oregon. We just, we wouldn't have seen the opportunities for folks who otherwise wouldn't have had an opportunity. Now, and we've got to go, I guess, and adjust so that there is some stability. But in a sense, that's also on the industry to get on the same page. You mentioned the accounts receivable. and being treated like other industries. Again, I 100% agree with you on that. But what you have to realize is, like with alcohol, and Nikki and I have talked about it, Jesse and I have talked about it. If you want to get treated like alcohol, you do have accounts receivable. That's taken care of at a portion of the market that you can't even get deliveries if you're not paid up in full. But that will have to come from the industry going down to Salem and getting that changed in law, because we can't do it on our own at OLCC, but everybody's got to get on the same page. And frankly, I just don't know that, and I'm going to put it back on you guys a little bit. I don't know that there's everybody's on the same page, frankly. I think everyone's on the same page in terms of being upset and fearful, but I don't know that they're on the same page in terms of where they want to see things go. So that's going to really be a challenge for you guys. And I'm there to help you. I've been there to help you since day one. But I also think, just frankly, you got to stick by your champions. There's been a lot of people that have really tried to help this industry, have really stuck their necks out. What did it get them? You know, not anything good, I'll tell you that much. And they did nothing wrong. So, yeah. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on it. I'm going to shut up now. You know I'm here for you. I've always been there for you. So we'll keep up the good fight.
Thanks, Matt. And I do want to say, like, there is one thing I do want to acknowledge that you called out there, and maybe toss it to Nikki to close out. But one is that about the amount of work that's been happening. And when I talk to my folks, I'm engaged. I'm organizing. Just so you guys know, I run a national call every month with trade associations from across the country. I am in pushing people to join ASTM, which is a standard development organization, to get engaged on that level. I am really trying to make sure the industry is professionalizing, has its fingers in all of the places it needs to have it. But one of the things that when I'm having these conversations, I repeatedly tell the people is, I know it feels like we've been here for 100 years, but we're still a very new industry. Like, people have been making shoes for thousands of years, selling it legally in the marketplace. We've been selling legal cannabis in any legal marketplace in America since 2015, really. So, and in Oregon, 2016. It is not long. And so we're literally building the legal foundation for what is $100 billion industry nationally, annually. And it is a lot of work, and it is not clean sometimes it's not pretty, but this is the early days. This is when we really are needing that leadership. And one of the things I want to say to your guys' credit that I do hear from people who are in MSOs is that Oregon is one of the better states to exist in regulatory wise. Like, the OLCC is, I hear, massively better than what they experience in other states. But I don't want to lose that, and I don't want to lose our competitive edge. But the other thing that I'm really terrified of is something that Nikki was hinting at, which is that Oregon is going to be a donor state, right? Oregon is going to grow cannabis. The question is, where does the capital go? Does that go back to New York, or does that stay in state? Now, some of this is inevitable, right? I'm not anti, investment from big players or anything, but it's just a question of, is that the only way you can survive? Or can you build your own company and find the financial resources and strength within the Oregon market to grow your company and keep that capital, that excess capital, in the state going to those homegrown businesses? But I did want to acknowledge, though, that, yeah, we are new and we are building consensus, and we're doing everything we can to build consensus and create a unified thing. But it takes time and education, and we're doing it. And we look forward to having a partnership with you guys.
Well, we're rooting for you, but
Yeah, we're behind you, Jess. Thank you. Nikki, anything else?
That was a pretty strong finish, Mr. Chair. I think I'll leave it there.
Good, strong finish. Thank you very much. Commissioners, anything else for this group? If not, thank you very much. We appreciate this partnership, and we'll stick together to figure it out going forward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you,
go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say thank you the commission and for all the folks listening. Partnership takes listening to each other and understanding that we have different things that we're having to accomplish. But I just really appreciate that we have a bill in. Rosie and I were texting. I didn't have the bill number, so it's exciting that Nikki's got it. It's 4121. And it really, the context of it is I wanted to let the commissioners know Oregon is part of, it really is, I think Jesse called it federal advocacy, but it's also just federal awareness. So just the Oregon Attorney General signed on to a letter supporting moving to Schedule 3. I think that's significant. The biggest thing federally that I see, other than the 280E that would come with Schedule 3, giving some tax relief basically to our industry, is really the intoxicating hemp market that the 2018 Farm Bill created. And so that's an area that Congress will be dealing with in the next year. And that's an area that Commissioner Miletus and Chair Doherty and I went with several of the staff to the December annual CANRA meeting, the regulators of this industry. That is clearly the emerging national market is intoxicating hemp through the Farm Bill. It's not age regulated, so there's no age regulations of who you can sell it to. We're very concerned about that. And just to be clear, we think that the adult regulated recreational market is the better market for safety, for the health of Oregonians. And we're having Constantine Severe, of course, is our policy advisor. I don't think Constantine's on today. But we're making sure that people understand that Farm Bill and the cannabinoid hemp or the intoxicating hemp is also a really important issue to settle for this adult recreational industry. So we just wanted to say back on some of the issues that Nikki and Jesse raised. We are working in we're working in the same direction on those and trying to make sure that federal government is informed on where they're going, eyes open, because I think that's an external issue, an external threat even that we need to be aware of.
Well, if I can jump in there just 1 second, tell me, the numbers are astronomical on what sales of hemp. I think they exceed marijuana, do they not?
Nationally, based upon what Steve Crowley on our team, who is really an expert on this with CANRA, nationally it looks like the intoxicating hemp market is larger than the adult recreational market, and so those are really strong market dynamics that I think Jesse and Nikki are talking about. How do you foster this market that we have? In light of when we're talking about as we see a national market where how would those two survive, how would they thrive, what direction? These are really big questions that we're trying to inform our partners with, and Nikki and Jesse are too, I think. So just wanted to give that context.
Commissioner Miletus, go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say for the trade association too, I mean, all tea leaves are pointing to the fact that it's going to go Schedule 3 at the federal level. And I'm not, I don't know anything specific, but I think the trade associations need to get real clear, that there's only so much that this agency or the state can do if that happens. I think having a clear understanding of where the trade associations are going to go, because I've heard a lot of opposition to it going Schedule 3. And I want to be clear, that is not something that the state can necessarily, we can opine on it, but I think that, does the trade association at this point have a position on Schedule 3? And if it does, well, Frank, I won't even ask that. Just maybe be considerate of the fact that these are federal issues, not state issues. So, anyways, and when we play the hand we're dealt, so we'll do what we can. Anyways, we'll keep up the good fight.
Yeah, we all good here? All right. Is Shanna on here? We're going to talk about tribal state government and government update from Shanna Radford.
There
Hey
she
there.
is.
I am on.
There you are. Hi.
Hello there, Chairman.
Nice to see you
commissioners.
again.
Nice to see you again, too. Hope everyone's staying warm. I'm actually in Montana right now, so pardon my get up over here, but it's pretty cold. So
Hi. You are bundled up.
yeah. So we have Karen Clivering on from DOJ, and then we also have Patrick Flanagan, who's over at Legislative Commission on Indian Services. So I think I'm happy to be here. I don't have a presentation. We kind of all jointly put one together for you all. Of course, I'm an inaugural Tribal Affairs Director within the governor's office. Of course, you all know who she is. And it's really exciting. I've been here for about a few months. And, part of my role is to, of course, foster and strengthen government-to-government relationships with all of the 9 federally recognized tribes, and we have a couple of out-of-state tribes too that we work with. And so that's really the main goal here. Part of it setting up a newly established tribal affairs office, and the other part is policy advising and assisting the agencies, and working with LCIS and of course all the colleagues across the state enterprise and agencies to figure out a really hopefully a really good model. We've done really well in Oregon along the way. We've set a lot of the precedent for other states to work with tribes. So I think that's really exciting. And so I think I look forward to working with you all learning more. I'm actually a former commissioner. I served on the Warm Springs Cannabis Commission back in, a few years ago. And I see Jennifer Curran on here. It's good to see you. Her and I actually went to high school together in Pendleton. So hello there. It's good to see you. But I will hand it over to Karen. I'm here available, as I always tell everyone, to support. If you have any questions, there's no silly questions. The number one thing that I want to leave, of course, is, always be thinking about tribes as business partners. I keep hearing the word partnership, which is good. We do want to make sure we're inclusive of tribal perspectives, tribal needs. Tribes are really looking at diversifying their own economies, right? There's been gaming for a majority of my life. I'd say, my career and my life and my children have benefited greatly from tribal gaming and the impacts there, and of course local communities, right? So, we see a lot more tribes looking at other opportunities within their economies. So I'm always thinking about tribes, I think, as we move forward. And again, thanks for your time, and I'll hand it over to Karen.
Thank you, Shanna.
All right, let me start sharing my screen with the presentation, and then we'll get started. All right, if you guys could give me a thumbs up and let me know if you can see my screen and you can hear me okay. Of course, I can't see this. Okay, great. All right. So good morning. Thank you for this invitation to present to you today, along with my colleague across the aisle, I guess. It's not aisle, but Patrick Flanagan, Legislative Commission on Indian Services. My name's Karen Clivering. I am with DOJ. I'm DOJ's Native American Affairs Coordinator. I've actually worked in the General Counsel Division of DOJ for about 10 years. And so I appreciate and understand the challenges, opportunities, and rewarding experiences it is to be a state agency. And I also to implement your authority to make decisions. And so I come into this role as Native American Affairs Coordinator with that background. I know as well that OLCC has a long history of partnering with tribes. And so I hope that this presentation provides you with some more background and context And then Patrick, Shana, and are open to questions throughout this presentation. But before I jump in, I wanted to let Patrick speak and introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. Patrick Flanagan. I'm the Executive Director, Legislative Commission on Indian Services. Karen and I have known each other for a long time. We're not across the aisle, but we're down the street since I'm in the legislative branch now. Although I used to just be down the hall because I've been at the Commission on Indian Services for about 2.5 years. But before that, I spent 11 years at the Oregon Department of Justice myself. So we were colleagues in that capacity. We've known each other for a long time. I also want to extend my thanks for the invitation to come and speak with you all today. Just talk a little bit about government to government relationships, what that framework looks like. Obviously, you've already heard to Stephen in this little bit that the interaction with tribes happens on 2 different levels. There's the government to government relationship that exists by law. Then there's also the business opportunities that exist in thinking of tribes as partners. And so it really is kind of a multi-leveled relationship that you all have with tribes and that the state has with tribes in general. So thanks. We'll roll into the presentation here. I think we're going to just be switching back and forth on slides for a little bit, but feel free to jump in with any questions.
Patrick, this is Craig. Mr. Chair, do you mind if I jump in just for a second on an intro?
Sure.
Part of going remote is so I just want to be clear. So we've got Patrick from the legislature, Karen from DOJ helping us. Shana, thank you for calling in from Montana. And then, of course, we have our own Rosie Shatkin. Rosie's on the call too. And so we have some new team members that we're around us. We wanted to intro everyone, but Rosie, I want to make sure you're on the call too. And so the commissioners know our liaison is Rosie, and we've got folks that we work with and are changing, and we wanted to make sure everyone knew who our new partners were. Rosie, are you on here?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Director Prince. I appreciate that and the intro, and very happy to see my colleagues here and the opportunity for them to share all the work that they've been doing over the years. It's pretty incredible. So thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay.
All right. So let's just get started with the refresher for those of you who may not know or the names of the 9 federally recognized tribes here in our state. We start with the Burns Paiute tribe, Confederated tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw, the Coquille Indian tribe. There's the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians, Confederated tribes of the Grand Ronde community, the Klamath tribes, the Confederated tribes of the Siletz Indians, Confederated tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, and the Confederated tribes of the Warm Springs Reservation. The next slide here, I ran through that quickly because I wanted to get to this map. I like this map, although it is quite old, because it kind of gives you a place. You can kind of see in the state where the primary tribal headquarters are located. And that it always helps me to kind of have that context. Also keep in mind, this does not show all of the tribal lands, but it does show the primary reserved lands and where their primary government bodies are located. Another reason why I like this map is just to highlight that we do, as Sheena said, have other tribes that we interact with that are not necessarily Oregon tribes. So in the southeast corner of the state, we have the Fort McDermott Paiute Indians. They are half of their reservation, I believe, is within Oregon. The other half is in Nevada. And so they actually are considered a Nevada tribe, I believe. And then, of course, we have the Columbia River tribes that are part of the Columbia River fishing. And so that included with that is the Confederated tribes of the Warm Springs and Umatilla. But then we also have Yakima in Washington and Nez Perce up in Idaho. And so this just kind of gives you an idea of who our tribal partners are in the state, where they're located. You can see there's a lot of different geography, as you all know, and the different opportunities. Patrick?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, and that previous map too, as Karen had said, it is important to remember that just shows current boundaries that have been imposed upon the tribes as of today. If we were to look at a map of ancestral use areas, if we were to look at a map of ceded lands under treaties, this map of Oregon would look very, very different. There would be a far greater coverage because Oregon was tribal land before Oregon was Oregon. So I want to really emphasize kind of the how this is really just a snapshot in time, and that it's the current state of affairs from a governmental legal standpoint, but it is not reflective of ancestral use areas or ceded lands, areas where tribes have an interest within the state of Oregon. It's much greater than that map. But back to the third slide, just some of the fundamentals here. And I think this bears repeating for all of us. And when we try to think about the framework of how we work with tribes and how we think about tribes, it's important to remember and maybe use as a framework kind of the federal paradigm. And I see government to government relations as kind of a trickle down effect, right? But because we have the federal government paradigm based upon the relationship between the United States and the tribes, whether it's treaties, a treaty history of ratified treaties or unratified treaties or executive orders. There are very, very different histories for each of the tribes, but there is a fundamental relationship between all of the tribes and the federal government. The federal government recognizes that Indian tribes represent unique legal entities in the United States that are distinct political communities. They have powers of self-government. This tribal sovereignty predates the United States, and the Constitution considers Indian tribes as separate governments. That third bullet point, sovereignty predates the United States. A lot of people think of the treaties as a vehicle for giving something to tribes. And in reality, the treaties were rights that were reserved by the tribes. So the sovereignty that tribes have, that isn't something that was given to them by the United States. Tribes were sovereign prior to the signing of the treaties. Can we go to the next slide? And some of the specific examples of those, the notions or the reality of sovereignty are that Indian tribes can legislate on matters of tribal concern. They adjudicate civil and criminal matters under their own laws. They have the authority to levy taxes, regulate land uses. They also have water rights, hunting and fishing rights, both within and outside reservation boundaries. This gets a little bit to that federal versus state relationship. The states do not have legal jurisdiction over tribes or their lands. And then I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but it's critical to recognize that not all tribes have a treaty history. And even among those that do, those histories vary. And again, I certainly don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence here, but for me, it always helps to remember the fact that there are treaties between the United States and tribes really does send a strong message of how we at the state should view tribes and our interaction with tribes. A fundamental axiom under international law that treaties are signed among equals. And so the federal government, when they engaged in treaties with these tribes, were treating tribes as equals. Not necessarily equals in power. Not every country, not every nation is an equal when it comes to power or economy or things of that nature, but they're equal when it comes to levels of influence and sovereignty. Conversely, if there was a dispute between a state in the United States and the federal government, the federal government would not sign a treaty with that state. If there was a dispute between a state in Mexico and the United States, the United States would not sign a treaty with that state. Treaties are among equals. And so that framework, I think, is essential to remember when we think about how the state should be interacting with tribes, because the federal government views tribes as equals. And that kind of gives a good framework for how we should approach tribes. emphasizing that point, I was reminded last year at Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians, ATNI, one of the presenters was up front and they were asked about, actually it was an individual gentleman from the Army Corps of Engineers, and he was asked a question by one of the tribal representatives about his perception of sovereignty and what that meant and what the impact or importance of treaties is. And his response was, Article 6 of the United States Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, says that treaties are the supreme law of the land. And so that in itself speaks volumes as to how the federal government views the relationship with tribes. And again, that just kind of lays the groundwork for how the state should be approaching relations with tribes as well as governmental entities. Just some of the last points on government to government relations. Federal law recognizes a special kind of Indian sovereign authority. You'll hear the term domestic dependent nations. Congress enacted this sovereign authority to protect Indian groups from state authority. And I gave the citation, the reference for that, if you want to read further on that notion. And the second bullet point there kind of talks more about the same, that sovereign nature of the tribal relations and the tribal existence and the relationship between tribes and the federal government. Those are both sources that exist, the BIA site and the Cornell site, that can talk further about tribal sovereignty if you have further questions on what that means. Just a little bit about how we can step in and why I'm here today. So the Commission on Indian Services was formed about 50 years ago. It was a first of its kind endeavor and remains a first of its kind endeavor in the United States. The Commission on Indian Services is a body that was created within the legislative branch. The commission itself, there are 9 tribal representatives. In most cases, it's the tribal chair for each of the tribes. There's no statutory requirement that it be the tribal chair. It just has to be a representative from each of the 9 tribes. I think it is noteworthy that for many, many years now, that tribal representative has been the tribal chair. I think that is indicative of the relationship between the tribes and the Commission on Indian Services and the role that LCIS plays in state to tribal relations. We also have 4 legislators. There are 2 from the House, 2 from the Senate, a Republican and Democrat each. Those are the voting members of the commission. And then the commission itself, the Commission on Indian Services, we meet currently 3 times a year. We had gone to 4 times a year when we were having to do virtual meetings like this. Previously, it had been 3 times a year. They were all-day sessions. I think as many commissions did, as many groups and entities did with the onset of COVID, those in-person meetings went to virtual meetings, and out of respect for everyone's Zoom tolerance or lack thereof, we decided to hold meetings 4 times a year instead of 3 times a year, but only make them half a day instead of a full day. We have gone back to the hybrid meetings now, and so we're back to 3 times a year. And during those meetings, we will invite various state agencies and entities to come in and do presentations to primarily to those tribal representatives. And it can either be a request of the state agency to come in and make a presentation to get an idea of where tribes might be on a particular issue. It could also be at the request of the tribal chairs because they have a question on a specific issue and they want to be briefed on kind of the state of affairs from that agency's perspective. This just talks about the fact that we do have those meetings, used to be, like I said, on a quarterly basis. We also try to monitor legislation. So I took note of HB 4121. We try to monitor legislative progress in each session where either agencies can let us know of matters that they think might be of concern to tribes, or tribes can let us know specific bills that they would like us to track, and we can track that progress for them. And we do that on a weekly report that comes out during the legislative session. And if anyone would like to be on that distribution list, just please feel free to let us know. We send that out, like I said, on a weekly basis. And then I believe this might be my last slide for right now. Just a screenshot of our website. We do have a website that is available for all of you to take a look at. As you can see within the tabs about mid-screen there's a homepage, the 9 Tribes of Oregon, state agencies, resources, about LCIS. There's a lot of history there. You know, what might be most useful to many on this call is the 9 Tribes of Oregon tab. If you go to that tab, you can see there's an arrow. It drops down and it lists each of the 9 Tribes of Oregon. When you click on that tab for that tribe, it will frequently take you to their website or refer you to their website. It has information on each of the tribes. The tribes have stated what they would like us to put on their behalf, but also of equal importance, that right-hand column, which right now is filled with announcements and FAQs. The right-hand column, if you're within the tribes provide us with information as to who is in what role within the tribe. It will list the tribal chair. It will list the contact methods for the tribe. It also frequently will list personnel within different officers or divisions, so their staff members, whether it be natural resources, economic development, things of that nature. So if you're trying to figure out who you need to get a hold of at any particular tribe on a particular subject, you can go to the 9 Tribes of Oregon tab, drop down to that specific tribe, click on that tribe's link, and then the right-hand column should give you the information as to who you need to reach out to and what that contact method is. When it comes to consultation letters, and you know there will be some discussion coming up here on the specifics of consultation and that formal government-to-government interaction, we also keep a list at LCIS of not only how tribes like to be reached out to and addressed in that government-to-government correspondence, but who should receive those requests for consultation and how the tribe likes to receive those. Most of the tribes at this point are willing to receive a letter by way of attachment on an email. We do have a few tribes that want both email with the letter attached and also prefer a hard copy of the letter mailed to their tribal offices, but we keep a list of that as well. So please feel free to reach out to LCIS as a resource whenever you're needing to reach out to tribes.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. And I will note, I've used the resources tab in the LCIS website many times. There's a lot of really helpful information about consultation, the history of how LCIS started, as well as some commentary about land acknowledgement statements and things of that nature. But so to keep going forward with our presentation, now we're going to talk about the Oregon law on tribal relations. And really, this is about what is required of state agencies like OLCC. And that is primarily found in ORS 182, 162 through 182, 168. And the purpose of that law is to promote positive government-to-government relations between states and tribes. A little bit of history. This law actually started from a 1996 executive order from Governor Kitzhaber with the goals to establish a process to assist in resolving potential conflicts, maximize key intergovernmental relations, enhance an exchange of ideas and resources for the greater good of all Oregon citizens, identify a key agency contact who is responsible for coordination, and also provide an annual meeting between the governor, tribal leaders, and representatives. The executive order also created cluster groups for tribes and state agencies to collaborate around different specific areas of policy. I participate on several of them. Patrick, I believe, is in all of them too. Rosie, as Craig noted, your tribal liaison participates in them, and they're really just a good place to raise issues, discuss common areas of concern, and really for the agencies and the tribes to learn from one another. So some of the clusters currently are health and human resources, economic development and community services, public safety regulation, education, and cultural resources and natural resources. And so really what those groups do is there's a representative from different agencies, and then their parallel in with the tribe. So the natural resources director of the tribe, for example, with various tribal liaisons from the different state agencies that work with natural resources, as an example. And so the executive order that I just mentioned was codified through Senate Bill 770, which is why you have that in the parentheses, to make it formal, to formalize it more. It's not just an executive order, it's statutory, and it's statutory law. Again, similar requirements that were codified there. There needs to be a tribal relations policy. Some people call that the 770 or Senate Bill 770 policy. You need to identify a tribal key contact, identify state agency programs affecting the tribe. So agencies need to sit down and think through what are our programs? How are we interacting with tribes? How may our programs affect tribal governments, tribal populations? There's an annual training as well as a required annual report. Again, the website Patrick noted, all of this agency's annual reports are posted on that website. And then there's the annual meeting, which did not happen this year, but happens typically in the fall or winter every year, in which all of the state agencies, all of the tribes and the governor convene. And just it's a great opportunity to learn from each other, discuss common interests, and hopefully celebrate, the wins, to celebrate the positive things that we have accomplished. One of the key pieces to highlight here is the law requires state agencies to make a reasonable effort to cooperate with tribes in the development and implementation of programs of the state agency that affect tribes. This is key to the state's government to government efforts in our work with tribes. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later and what that looks like. We talk about it in terms of consultation. But I just kind of wanted to highlight that issue, highlight where it comes from. It comes from ORS 182. And so we'll touch on that soon. Before we jump into that, I also wanted to talk about another law that is relevant to agencies, and that's ORS 19110, which authorizes state agencies to enter into agreements with tribes, provided the agreements are consistent with and not in conflict with agency authority. And what this means is state agencies can freely enter into agreements with tribes about common issues. There's not additional layers like other states have where something has to be approved by the legislature or ratified, but it really gives the state and the tribe a vehicle to continue to do business together. So, for example, OLCC has several agreements with tribes related to licensing for serving alcohol, and there's also agreements with tribes about cannabis production. And so this is just one of the many examples of how we can continue that partnership. Agreements are also really good ways to address problems in advance, how to proactively think about what challenges the two parties may have and how to address it before it happens. So agreements also may include contractual remedies, different ideas of enforcement, dispute resolution, and also discussions and recognitions of sovereignty. As Patrick talked about earlier, tribes are sovereign nations and they're not generally subject to the laws of the state. So understanding the tribe's sovereignty and acknowledging and respecting it, and how to work together through an agreement or through different remedies or acknowledgements. Those are things that can be addressed in an agreement to really help facilitate just this relationship and the partnership. Examples of agreements: state does a lot of grant agreements, and tribes do a lot of grant agreements. Then also just general intergovernmental agreements about providing services or how the two governments are going to be interacting. Another key thing when we're talking about sovereign immunity is choice of law, and just some of those issues that if we didn't have the agreement and there was conflict later on, it could slow things down. Patrick?
Thanks. If you don't mind, can you go back to 13 real quick? So one more back. So I just wanted to emphasize this because one of the things that I've seen in the last 2.5 years is there's been kind of an awakening, sounds overly dramatic, but a realization of the actual scope of what's statutorily required. If you read this statute, this comes from 182-164 sub 3. It says a state agency shall make a reasonable effort to cooperate with tribes in the development and implementation of programs of the state agency that affect tribes. State agency is mentioned twice there. And a lot of times I think people for many, many years have thought that this is limited to state agencies and therefore it doesn't apply to me, right? That's what state agencies have to do. Well, 182, like I said, this comes from 182-164. 182-162 is the definitions, and state agency is defined. Like lawyers tend to do, we didn't actually just define it in 182-162. We then had state agency as defined in 358-635. So you have to go to a different section, but state agency, perhaps surprisingly, is actually defined, and it's far more broad than people had initially anticipated or have realized as of late, because state agency by definition includes all officers, employees, agencies, boards, committees, and commissions of the legislative, executive, administrative, and judicial branches of state government. In other words, it's everybody. It's not just state agencies. So one place that I've seen kind of this expand as of late, I was invited to come down to a meeting of the Board of Forestry in Medford a number of months ago. And the Board of Forestry itself was thinking, well, the agency, the Oregon Department of Forestry, has to comply with this. But does this mean that we, as the Board of Forestry, like as we're contemplating policy actions and decisions, are we also supposed to be engaging in consultation with the tribes? And the answer is yes. Because if you look at the definition of state agency, it's not just the agency, but it's also any officer, employee, board, committee, and commission of the legislative, executive, administrative, and judicial branch. And so, in my world, being in the legislative branch, that's also been a moment of reckoning for a lot of legislators. Wait a minute, this means that we as legislators are also supposed to be engaging in consultation with tribes when we're contemplating bills and things of that nature. And by law, the answer is yes. So I just wanted to go back and kind of reiterate both the magnitude and the scope of this apparently simple statement that it places requirements, at least by verbiage, on state agencies, but really goes far beyond that.
Chair,
Commissioner?
Mr. Flanagan,
Yes.
thank you so much for the education. I really do appreciate it. I have kind of a, well, anyhow, I do have a strong interest in the tribes and learning more about the tribes. I just wanted to know, so as it relates to this agency, are we satisfying agreements? I have two questions.
Satisfying the requirements under this statute, or are you talking about specific agreements?
No, general, it's a broad question. Like, is there something that's ongoing, or is this ongoing, or is there a question of satisfaction as it relates to the OLCC?
From my perspective, and this is just my perspective, understanding that I have more of a 30,000 foot, actually, I have more of a 60,000 foot view, because I'm looking at all of the agencies, boards, and commissions around the state. And what I can say from my perspective is that I have not heard complaint that the OLCC is not fulfilling its obligations. I do think that it's something that's always worth keeping in mind. I think it's something that's always worth reviewing and asking at every step in the process as to whether these obligations are really being satisfied or not. But that's also why you have a tribal liaison, somebody who's identified within your agency who is tasked with keeping an eye on these issues and being aware of what's important to the tribes and keeping aware of whether the outreach has happened, but also at the same time looking inward and maybe it's sometimes being that thorn in the side of the agency or the commission to say, hey, I don't think outreach has happened and it should be on this particular issue. So that's where somebody like Rosie comes in. And I know she does a very, very thorough job. We communicate on a regular basis on any number of issues. So I guess in the big picture, I would say I have not heard concern, but I can also say that I have confidence based upon the people that you have in the respective roles within the agency that the work is being done and that review and analysis is ongoing.
So perhaps this second question, thank you for that, is probably directed to possibly Director Prinz. I'm wondering, in light of my new education, this meeting, would it be appropriate to have a quarterly update on tribal relations, since it sounds like they are sovereign and just to make sure we are, or they are having a seat at the table?
Yeah. Commissioner Porter, thanks for that question. Yeah, this is really we wanted to make sure that Miss Radford is new. I wanted to make sure everyone's clear that Miss Radford is in a new position in the governor's office as Tribal Affairs Director, and we just wanted to introduce you. But I think that's a great idea that the chair and I could talk about is periodic updates. So I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad that Patrick said that. From his view, 60,000 foot, we're meeting our requirements. But yeah, we can always, I think it's important that we can do more because, both of the industries that we regulate, there is interest in the tribes from all different perspectives of entering the industry, concerns about the public health impact of say, a licensee or an agent of ours. So I think that's really a great suggestion, and it's something that we could talk to Chair Doherty and have a quarterly update. I think it's a good idea, and we just wanted to make sure with new faces and I think new interest that everyone's aware of these relationships. So great thought.
Shana, you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman and Director, and for your comment, Commissioner Porter. I just wanted to follow up on Patrick's mentioning, I think, of this requirement, and to your question was, what can OLCC maybe be doing a little bit better? And I think that's exactly, my position and my role is to really help look at that. One of the biggest, I would say, opportunities and maybe a challenge, I think, is really figuring out, defining, I think, right now it's still kind of in development working. How is the Tribal Affairs Director, Tribal Affairs Office going to be working with LCIS and, the agencies and so forth and the tribes? And so what does that look like? And so I'm just, mentioning that those are still, we're still working through those very much so. Of course, there are the mandates and the statutes that are required. And of course, there's, those are kind of specific to LCIS or to the governor's office. So in that sense, I definitely am looking forward to that sort of long-term vision of increasing engagement, as you say, Commissioner Porter. I think really working with the agencies, tribal liaisons or tribal affairs directors to really get a better feel and that continuation of that back and forth of understanding. I know that'll probably be covered in another slide, but I think, also encouraging OLCC, the commission, and the staff to work with probably LCIS or myself to set up some times to go and engage with tribes yourself. spending that time and learning on your own, right? Take some field trips. I think that's important. Invite the tribes out to see, the distillery or things like that, what you all are working on. I think those are always, open to opportunity there. But just know that that's part of my role too, is really looking at the enterprise-wide, right, the statewide. And part of that is the HB House Bill 20, I think, is it 2123, Patrick? I believe. Gosh, there was all
41,
these bills.
I believe it's
HB
4121.
Oh, pardon me, 3173. This is a totally different thing, but sorry about that. The Tribal Consultation Task Force that was led by Rep. Sanchez last year. So that'll be a big, I think, space where Patrick and I and the tribes and a couple of agency folks and some House and Senate reps will work together to really look at and identify and clarify a lot of these. So this is the current status quo right now. We'll actually be taking a deeper dive to really clarify and define what tribal consultation means. So things might change. I would assume they will hopefully get a little bit more clarified, identify, what are those critical mass moments of engagement with tribes. The other thing that I'm noticing is that we aren't really tracking very well, I think, the data around, how are agencies currently tracking tribal consultation? What is the training needs there? What are the opportunities to, I think, continue learning, having these sort of lunch and chats or whatever. But I definitely am working with Patrick and, looking forward to coming up with some cool ideas to engage more with the tribal liaisons and the state agencies to learn together on kind of where we can all improve to work with tribes. So just wanted to mention that. Didn't mean to, I think,
Thank you,
go on
Shannon.
too much, but yeah, thanks.
So
Thank you.
Chair, just to follow up
Yes.
on that, thank you, Ms. Radford. Would it be possible, I guess it would be Ms. Shatkin who would be the one to initiate the field trips to the distillery? And she would work with you, Ms. Radford? That's a question.
Yeah, myself and Patrick, I think are a good start. So definitely we can help you navigate, connecting with the tribal folks for sure. If you're interested, we'll be happy to help you.
Yeah, Rosie will help us with all that, keep us on the moving forward there. Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Shanna because we did go to school together. So I did want to say hi and did want to say that these issues are near and dear to my heart. And Shanna might know there are a lot of opportunities. And so I just wanted to encourage people. There's a lot of opportunities to go and get involved, go to powwows. Pendleton is doing a 2 cultures, 1 community powwow at our convention center at the end of February 23rd through the 25th, for basically to involve all of the communities to come and see powwow and to involve the Native American community. And Pendleton Roundup, Happy Canyon's another opportunity to do that. See the teepee encampment, but there are lots of opportunities, and I just want to say that I'm happy to help Shanna in any way that you need to spread the word and continue to involve the Native American community. So.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think there we go. Okay. So what else?
Karen, I think we can go back to, sorry that I derailed us so much and took us back a couple slides, but I think we can go back to slide 15.
Sounds good. Good conversation.
And, just to kind of close out a thought on that, when it comes to engaging with tribes and taking advantage of those opportunities, really everything that we're talking about, and we're getting ready to talk about consultation here, right? The legal requirement for consultation. This all comes down to diplomacy. And it all comes down to building relationships, like anything in diplomacy does. So the more time you take to build those relationships, the more solid the foundation is that you get to work from. The fact that you're having this meeting here and having this conversation now can either be viewed as a great start or a good continuation in developing those relationships with the tribes, with these sovereign nations that are our neighbors here in the state of Oregon. And you all, it doesn't take much to think back to instances that you all have read about in the papers or seen at other times where those foundations didn't exist and conflicts arose between an agency or a board or a commission and tribes. And because the time hadn't been taken to start those relationships and build those foundations, there was little latitude for forgiveness when errors occurred or disagreements occurred. So I would encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities and reach out to the tribes and reach out to staff members at the tribes and have those conversations and start to build those relationships. So, the why consultation, because it's required. And I would say really before because it's required, because there's a moral imperative, right? We know that we have these sovereign nations as neighbors, and we know that we all live here. Tribes will tell you, we've been here, we were here before, we're here today, and we're going to be here tomorrow, right? They're here. And I think in fairness, the state of Oregon can at least tag on to the second of those two bullet points. We're here now and we continue to be here in the future. The reality is we all are in this together. We're all going to be neighbors. And so there's a moral imperative to engage in consultation. But if that moral imperative isn't enough for you, it's also required by law that you engage in consultation with the tribes. And really, this is just a reiteration of what we've already talked about, 182, 164 sub 3 in the definition of state agency, just to reinforce that notion that it is required by law.
Thank you.
Karen, next.
Karen, can I ask you, how many slides have we got left in this? Sensitive to time.
Oh, of course. We have about 8 more slides, but we can breeze through them quickly as well. So whatever works for you.
Just continue with your presentation. I just want to be sensitive to some other
Yes.
presentations we have.
Your other business.
Thank you
No,
very
that
much.
makes
I very much appreciate this, and we certainly are on board all about relationships. This is a key place for us at the commission in maintaining and growing relationships on a very strong basis. So I hear you clearly on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the interest in time, we can kind of move forward pretty quickly here. One of the things that Shana had referred to was that there hasn't been as much clarity in what is consultation, what is the tribal relations, what are the requirements, and that's, I've seen that in advising agencies when they come to us and question is, well, what is consultation? How do we do it? And often you go to the statute, say, okay, well, the statute says consultation is this. We don't necessarily have that now or yet. And so what I have found helpful is to look to very clear consultation principles that the federal government has provided, and which is why you'll see this slide itself has many references to the United States. These are excerpts from the White House memorandum on standards for consultation. And I think there's really strong parallels. I think it sets a really good standard. And it also shows, tribes are consulting with the federal government as well. And so I think it's helpful for us as state agencies to understand how they may be interacting with the federal government, and what's been working in that relationship can really help us inform how we are doing our consultation. Key principle is tribal consultation is a two-way nation-to-nation exchange of information and dialogue. And I think that's one of the things I like to emphasize, that it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. It's not oh, hey, I let them know. It's not, oh, here's a notice. We talked once. I heard, they shared, we're done. It's a dialogue. It's continued discussion. That's why the consultation or the statute requires consideration of what are the programs, what's the impact, because the goal is that it's ongoing so that it is meaningful. Here's a couple slides of what leads to potential success. Some key things to think about. Acknowledge that it is two-way nature of the consultation. You may need to coordinate with other state agencies because of just the broad impact and the different ways that tribes interact with state agencies and how we are all connected. And so also consultation shouldn't be, oh, wait, let's check that box. That's one less, oh, what's the last thing that I need to do? You know, don't forget, don't overlook the need to consult. And many of the cluster groups wherein I've been learning from our tribal partners, they stress consultation needs to happen early and often. So it shouldn't be a second thought or an afterthought. Common pitfalls to highlight, things that just, you know, that can get runaway, that can, you know, hurt the consultation process, is assuming that a previous experience with the tribal government is going to be the same for all of your other consultations, all of your consultations with that tribe. Each tribe is unique and distinct. They're going to have different experiences and different things to bring to the table in that consultation. So be careful not to make that assumption. Not keeping up with changes in tribal government organization, staffing, who the elected officials are, what are different tribes developing, what are new goals, and that's where we can really lean into, or the agency can lean into your tribal liaison, who's going to be connected at these cluster groups, as well as Patrick and Sheena about, you know, who's a good person to talk with, how do we get connected. Not knowing what the priorities are of the tribal government, you know, that really helps with having like a shared understanding and the continued development of that relationship is knowing where the tribe's choosing to go, where is the tribe wanting to invest. You know, are they setting up establishing laws for their own cannabis production, or they're investing in new opportunities that may for casinos or development of that way. And then kind of overlooking and not respecting that it's a government to government consultation. It's not a tribe as a stakeholder. It's a very different relationship. And that's why we talk about it's not just, oh, provide notice like you would in rulemaking. It's just really having that conversation and continuing it. Oh, Patrick, I think I stole your slide, but
that's quite all right. That's
Karen, this
you
is
did
Craig. We've got some other updates, so I was just gonna see. I know Chair was checking in, but could we get a time check of maybe kind of wrapping it up, because we do have some other contested cases and other issues with going remote here. Sorry, Mr.
Sure.
Chair, I'm being a taskmaster.
No, thank you.
No, that's good. Well, you know, the rest of our slides are really kind of providing a little more thought into what is consultation, how to initiate it. You know, these are slides that we can provide afterward to look into it, and then just some more tips, and then our contact info on that.
Yeah, and I know Rosie's keeping tabs on all of this and keeping us informed, so appreciate that very much.
Okay, so you guys may have questions, but you have a lot of other work to do, so we appreciate that. But so you can probably, for all of us, we're welcome to come back and provide other information as needed, and just thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. That was very thorough. Commissioners, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Excellent.
And great presentation. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Take care. So do we have Craig, are you going to fill us in here on the warehouse update?
Yeah, I did, and I we didn't have a break put into the meeting here, so I can just do the next agenda item is just a really quick warehouse update. But I have to basically step in for Steve Robbins, y'all, because we are having some ice and water issues at our current warehouses. So Steve is working with those. Unfortunately, the Millport warehouse is being impacted by an ice dam, and then it's starting to melt. So I'm going to step in on this update. So our current warehouses, you guys are I want to thank our staff for making it in and keeping them open while we could. But we have had some closures this week, and we're dealing with some issues at Millport with water as it melts. So more updates on that. But really quickly on the new warehouse in Canby, we've got the subs out there doing soil samples. Steve and his team have been working with the owner's rep, and we're working with the city of Canby. So we've gotten some of those things back going. And most importantly, we got the contract to JE done before Christmas. Their team took the holidays off. We now have their response. We're working to finalize everything with DAS Risk on an insurance question, and we think we'll have this thing signed here imminently. It is. We've been keeping at it. I want you to know in behind the scenes. So that's the warehouse update. We're moving. Obviously, this pictures are before the snow. Steve's been working on it. Shirley Smith and Colin have been working with DAS Procurement and DOJ, and we've kind of reset things to get them going. So that's it. We're just getting to we're going to have that relationship with the general contractor we're working on. And when we get that, that'll be a real kickstart to moving forward.
So Craig, if I can ask you, we've got the contract is down to one question. It's a insurance question.
That's correct.
Okay, so we resolve that, and then the contract gets signed. Hopefully within the next few days or this week.
Yeah.
Coming week.
Then it'll just be the final review. I've just to let the commission know, I've escalated this to the chief operating officer of the state, Barry Leslie, DAS Procurement, DAS Risk, and DOJ have all thankfully prioritized this. They know it's critical for the state, and so that's correct. The last steps will be get those insurance questions answered, and then get it final review and signed. So we're looking forward to that.
All right. So, but we've been moving ahead into some other phases of this.
Correct.
As well. Yeah.
Correct. Those photos that Adam shared we're looking at the site to make sure that the drainage and the soil can handle the size of warehouse that we're doing. So we're moving. Thankful we're able to restart some of the moves with the subcontractors and working with the city of Canby. And I want to say that the city of Canby's been great to work with. So just all of those things are moving forward.
Okay. Commissioners, any other further questions on the warehouse?
A quick question, so with the subs, is OLCC staff subcontracting with them, or does that go through DAS, or how is that working?
Great question, Matt. It goes through DAS, Procurement, but we had held up on some of that work with the subcontractors as we were working out with the general contractor, and now we've been able to re-engage those. So the contracts do go through the big procurement process, but we're able to re-engage, if you will, and keep things moving on the site.
Cool. Yeah, just curious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got a contested case hearing. We're doing that in this room, I believe, and then we'll go into the back room afterwards. Okay.
That's correct. Thank you. And thank you. I want to thank the folks that were on previously. I want to thank the tribal affairs folks. And I needed to move on because we do have the parties for our contested case.
Thank you. So, Andrea, will you be presenting or? Okay.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair Doherty.
Good morning.
Good morning, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Andrea Lee, and I'm the case presenter in this matter. Today, you will be considering the proposed order to deny an application for a marijuana retailer license for SLC Eugene and applicant Cindy Standish. You will hear arguments from Ms. Standish attorney Kevin Jacoby regarding the exception that he has filed in response to the proposed order. As required by our rules, we will confine the remarks to the evidence of record and focus our discussion on the exception that he has filed. Prior to Mr. Jacoby, however, I will give a brief summary of the issue, the procedural history, and key points in the ALJ's opinion. After you hear from Mr. Jacoby, I will have the opportunity to respond to the arguments raised and answer any questions you may have. The issue that you have to decide is whether you agree with the ALJ's determination on two main issues. First, that the Commission must deny applicants' application for a marijuana retailer license because the land use compatibility statement issued by the City of Eugene showed the proposed use is prohibited as defined by OAR 845-025-1090 subsection 2 subsection A, and second, that the Commission may refuse applicants' application for a marijuana retailer license because Mr. Jeremy Wheeler has a financial interest in the business and would be subject to license denial, revocation, or suspension because he has a poor record of compliance with the Commission under OAR 845-025-1115 subsection 3. If you agree with the ALJ's decision, as is Commission staff's recommendation, then commissioners are asked to adopt the majority of the proposed order as it is written by the ALJ, but for one point. On page 16 of the proposed order, it stated that the Commission provided the 2021 LUX to applicant prior to issuance of the notice. This part of the sentence should be stricken from the final order as it was not established at hearing whether applicant received the 2021 LUX prior to the notice. The removal of this line has no impact on the final order as this is a non-essential issue. Commission staff strongly recommends that the proposed order be adopted as final order with this one change. Going into a bit of procedural history to explain how we got here today. In a nutshell, in December of 2019, Ms. Standish submitted an application to LLCC for a retailer application with a land use compatibility statement that I will reference as a LUX going forward. That LUX was not prohibited for the proposed use at that time. The application goes through the normal process of getting assigned to Inspector Lawrence Brown, who determined that a criterion report was necessary. The file was then assigned to investigator Eric Heidenreich, who determined that Mr. Jeremy Wheeler had a financial interest in the business. Next, the file was then assigned to Commission Compliance Coordinator Stephen Crowley, who completed the criterion report that recommended the license to be approved with restriction. Subsequently, Coordinator Crowley received a second and updated LUX dated May 4th, 2021, indicating that the land use is now prohibited for the proposed premise. Having a LUX showing that the land use is not prohibited is a mandatory basis for the license, as there is no LUX after May 2021 that shows the proposed use is not prohibited, or LCC had to deny the license application based on the LUX provided by the City of Eugene and because Jeremy Wheeler had a financial interest in the business. As I mentioned earlier, in December of 2019, Ms. Standish, who is Mr. Jeremy Wheeler's mother, filed a marijuana retailer license with the Commission to operate a retailer establishment in Eugene. The proposed premise was previously licensed as a marijuana dispensary under a Commission license held by Jeremy Wheeler. Pursuant to a settlement agreement, the Commission permitted Mr. Wheeler to sell the dispensary at the proposed premise and surrender the license in order to avoid revocation by the Commission. In December of 2019, Ms. Standish submitted a land use compatibility statement from the City of Eugene dated October 18, 2019. That LUX indicated that the proposed use at that time was not prohibited at the proposed premise. The testimony of Denise Byram, marijuana license technician for the Commission, indicated that the Commission was experiencing a significant backlog of marijuana application waiting to be processed during the time that Ms. Standish submitted her application. Ms. Byram described the workload as chaotic, as there were over 800 applications needing to be processed. That backlog was due to a combination of staffing shortage and a high number of applications received. At one point prior to the application being filed, the Commission placed a moratorium on new applications. 2 weeks prior to the moratorium being in place, the agency received 11 new 100 applications. Furthermore, testimony at the hearing indicated that it was common for application to take up to a year or sometimes 2 years before the Commission was able to make a determination to approve or deny a license application depending on the complexity of the file. In December of 2019, the Commission considered the landlord of any licensed premise to have a financial interest in the business because the performance of that business is capable of causing the landlord to benefit or suffer financially. After the file was submitted, it was first assigned to Inspector Lawrence Brown in April of 2020. Just 1 month prior, in March of 2020, Inspector Brown was one of 15 inspectors who was brought onto the licensing team to help with the application backlog. In April 2020, being an investigator and doing a deep dive of a licensing application was not within a normal course of Inspector Brown's work. After thoroughly reviewing the file, Inspector Brown determined that a criterion report was necessary to address the financial interest issue. A criterion report is a report that gets written whenever there is a basis to deny or restrict a license. The document contains facts of the case, the statutes and rule involved, and more importantly, a recommendation to either deny a license or approve the license with restriction. In April 2020, drafting a criterion report was not a part of Inspector Brown's job. As such, he returned the file to the queue. Next, the file was assigned to investigator Eric Heidenreich in July of 2020. While preparing the criterion report, investigator Heidenreich discovered that Mr. Jeremy Wheeler had a poor record of compliance, which he noted before the file was assigned to coordinator Stephen Crawley. As part of his process for reviewing the file, Mr. Crawley reached out to the Department of Revenue regarding non-payment of marijuana taxes, to which DOR responded. After a brief period of time, Coordinator Crawley realized that he didn't send a follow-up request to DOR and sent a second inquiry. Once DOR responded, Coordinator Crawley completed the criterion report in March of 2021, in which he proposed restriction in order for the license to overcome the denial based on Mr. Wheeler's financial interests. Following the submission of the criterion report, Coordinator Crawley was made aware that the applicant had lost its legal non-conforming status as of February 1st, 2020, after 365 days of non-operation. Coordinator Crawley received a second Lux dated May 4th, 2021, issued by the City of Eugene that proposed the use was no longer permitted at the proposed premise. At this point, Coordinator Crawley determined that a second criterion report was necessary because it created an additional basis for application denial. On December 16, 2021, Coordinator Crawley completed his second criterion report, indicating that the Commission must deny the application based on the updated May 4th, 2021 Lux and because of Mr. Wheeler's previously established financial interests. On March 1st, 2022, the OLCC issued a notice of proposed license denial denying SLC Eugene, LLC, and applicant Cindy Standish a marijuana retailer license because the land use compatibility statement now showed the proposed use as prohibited and because Mr. Jeremy Wheeler has a financial interest in the organization. On July 6, 2023, the Commission issued an amended notice of proposed license denial to correct statutory references to clarify current numbering of statutes and administrative rules. The Commission made no substantive changes to the allegation in the notice. The in-person hearing was heard by Senior Administrative Law Judge Joe Allen on July 25th, 2023. Applicant testified at hearing and was represented by Mr. Jacoby. OLCC was represented by case presenter myself and Kelsey Sanella. The hearing was concluded on July 25th, 2023. Both sides filed simultaneous written closing argument on August 25th, 2023. And on behalf of OLCC, DOJ provided a written response on September 15, 2023. On November 9, 2023, Judge Allen issued a proposed order that is at the heart of our discussion today. A couple of key points in the ALJ's opinion. First, it is applicant applying for a license who has the ultimate burden to establish eligibility for that license by a preponderance of the evidence. At hearing, applicant argued that the commission may not consider any LUX provided with an application unless the applicant specifically requested the LUX. Applicant asserted it was improper for the commission to consider the updated May 2021 LUX because this was not made at the request of the applicant. Rather, the applicant argued that the commission had already received the required LUX in December of 2019. As such, according to applicant, only the October 18, 2019 LUX is valid, and that the commission could only consider the initial LUX when reviewing the application. At hearing, investigator Heidenreich was asked if he ever received update information from applicant during his course of investigating an applicant's file, to which he answered yes. The follow-up question was asked is whether he was required to take the updated information into consideration as he continued with the investigation, and he also said yes. In his opinion, Judge Allen found applicant's interpretation of the relevant statute for the LUX required too narrow of a reading. Quoting from the proposed order at page 11, quote, because the city of Eugene amended its land use determination through the May 2021 LUX, the commission was both authorized and obligated to consider the most recent LUX in processing the application, close quote. The ALJ correctly concluded that pursuant to ORS 475C.053, subsection 1 and OAR 845-025-1115, subsection 1, subsection B, the commission is prohibited from approving an application without a valid LUX, showing the proposed use is not prohibited. Because the LUX issued by the city of Eugene in May of 2021 indicated that the proposed use was prohibited, the commission cannot approve the application. Additionally, the records show that from the time that applicant filed the application through the time period where the application was being processed, going through not one, but two separate criterion report, and by the time that the notice was issued, Mr. Wheeler was the landlord of the proposed premise and therefore would have a financial interest in the business. At hearing, applicant introduced a stipulated settlement agreement for marijuana license applicant presented at the May 27, 2021 commission meeting as Exhibit R5. The synopsis section of the exhibit specifically identified Mr. Jeremy Wheeler as a financially interested party. Applicant was made aware of the basis when she signed the settlement agreement agreeing to license restriction on 2 other marijuana licenses. Furthermore, while applicant argued that there was an ownership transfer, Judge Allen determined that the record supported a finding that only as of July 7, 2023, that Jeremy Wheeler no longer held ownership interest in the LLC. Judge Allen also noted on page 14 that at hearing, applicant provided no evidence of an unreasonable delay on the part of the commission. Rather, applicant inferred an unreasonable processing time by noting that the application was filed on December of 2019, and then the notice was not issued until a later point in time. In essence, the ALJ found that 1, applicant failed to demonstrate it meets the qualification for a marijuana retailer license because it could not provide a LUX from the city of Eugene issued after May 2021, showing the proposed use is not prohibited. 2, applicant failed to demonstrate that Jeremy Wheeler was not a financially interested party from December of 2019 to March of 2022. And 3, the allegation of unreasonable delay on the part of the commission was not proven at hearing. Accordingly, OLCC staff recommend that the proposed order as written be adopted as final order in this matter after removing the part of the sentence that stated applicant received the 2021 Lux prior to the issuance of the notice. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Mr. Jacoby to discuss the exceptions filed.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Thank you, Chair Doherty, commissioners. My name is Kevin Jacoby. I'm the attorney for the applicant, SLC Eugene LLC, and its owner, Cindy Standish. Ms. Standish regrets that she can't be here today. Her husband is in the hospital following a severe cardiac event. Before I go into my arguments on the exceptions of the proposed order, I'd like to offer some additional background facts that were touched on by Ms. Lee. So while I'm here before you on behalf of Ms. Standish as an applicant, she's also a licensee. For nearly 2 years, Ms. Standish has held a marijuana retailer license and a marijuana producer license with no record of compliance violations. She purchased these licenses from her son, Jeremy Wheeler, who was not as exemplary. In 2019, Mr. Wheeler agreed to accept responsibility for several violations, including the failure to pay marijuana sales taxes when due, in exchange for an opportunity to sell his business to his mother. At that time, Wheeler had 3 licenses: a retail license in Springfield, a producer license in rural Lane County, and a retail license in downtown Eugene, all of which he proposed to sell to Ms. Standish. The commission ratified Wheeler's settlement in November 2019. Ms. Standish submitted her change in ownership application for all 3 licenses a few weeks after Wheeler's sale surrender settlement was ratified by the commission. The relevant timeline is that in December of 2019, Ms. Standish submitted her complete application to OLCC. The application was alleged to have been complete on that date in commission staff's notice. So that's not disputed, that the application was complete as of December of 2019. This application, as Ms. Lee referenced, included a Lux from the city of Eugene dated October 2019, stating that the proposed Eugene store had been reviewed and not prohibited. Notably, that Lux had no time limit. There was no stated time limit on that Lux. On March 18th, 2021, nearly 15 months since since OLCC received a complete application, investigator Eric Heidenreich recommended approval of the application with restrictions. The director of licensing at the time, Jason Hansen, approved that recommendation about a week later. On June 17th, 2021, the commission approved stipulated agreements where Ms. Standish agreed to the same restrictions recommended by Heidenreich on the other 2 licenses, the Springfield store and the Lane County producer license. Ms. Standish was ready, willing, and able to accept the proposed restrictions on the Eugene license as well. On December 16th, 2021, which is just 5 days short of 2 years after the license was submitted, the complete license was submitted, Heidenreich submitted a new criterion report recommending denial of the license based on a Lux dated May 4th, 2021. Now I hear that the commission staff is conceding that that the portion of the proposed order that suggests that Ms. Standish received a copy of that Lux should be deleted, and I'm happy to hear that, because the evidence was that she never received a copy of that Lux until after this license was proposed to be denied. When she received this notice, she had not seen that May Lux. The city of Eugene did not bother to tell her that they issued a new Lux, because primarily the city of Eugene did not issue that May Lux upon a request of the applicant, which is required under the statute. So Before turning to the merits of the legal issues presented by the proposed order, I'd like to propose a potential off-ramp that would leave everybody satisfied. A final order, if entered, will result in a denial of the application on the merits and extinguish the availability of this retail license at issue, resulting in the frustration of the contract between Ms. Wheeler and her son for the purchase of this license, and requiring her to seek judicial remedies in the Court of Appeals to keep the license alive for transfer. In our exceptions, we have proposed an alternative to allow Ms. Standish a reasonable period of time to find a different location, a different suitable location for this license. Settlements of disputes after issuance of a proposed order is not without precedent in the marijuana context. The Commission has allowed for a settlement to be negotiated in the black market distribution case after a proposed order was issued that recommended cancellation of the licensee's license for several Category 1 violations. Those licensees also happen to be the owners of La Moda. Ms. Standish asked for similar consideration in the hope of avoiding a lengthy and costly judicial proceeding. As to the legal issues, the primary issue in this case involves how to resolve an application where there are two different luxes that reach opposite conclusions. In this case, Ms. Standish sought and received a lux in October of 2019 that stated that the proposed use was not prohibited and supplied that lux with her application. More than a year and a half later, the City of Eugene issued a subsequent lux with the opposite conclusion, that the proposed use was prohibited. There's no dispute that this lux was not issued at the request of the applicant, Ms. Standish. It was also not sent to Ms. Standish. It was sent only to OLCC. Nobody at OLCC inquired of Ms. Standish about this lux. Nobody at OLCC notified her that they received a second lux. The second lux argued that because the proposed location had been out of business for more than a year, it lost its legal non-conforming status under Eugene's code. However, the October 2019 lux had no stated expiration date and makes no mention of any non-conforming status. Further, the second lux, the May 2021 lux, does not state that it is amending or superseding the October 2019 lux. So there's Ms. Lee quoted from a portion of the proposed order that inferred that the second lux amended the first lux, but there's no evidence in the record that the City of Eugene was even intending to amend the first lux. And the second lux makes no mention of the October 2019 lux. As we've pointed out in our exceptions, the Commission's rules do not contemplate this situation, and neither does the statute that sets out the procedure for issuance of a lux. Both the Commission's rules and the statute contemplate the issue of one lux at the request of an applicant and specifies, and there's only one such lux in this record, the October 2019 lux. The proposed order interpreted the statute, which is ORS 475C.053, to not prohibit Commission staff from reviewing and relying on more than one lux in relation to a single application. However, in doing so, the ALJ failed to consider how the Commission itself has interpreted this statute in its rules. The Commission's rules uniformly refer to a single lux. The statute itself uses definite singular articles to refer to a lux 6 times. In similar circumstances, Oregon appellate courts have held that the use of the singular excludes the plural, notwithstanding the general interpretive guidance in ORS 127 sub 1 that says generally the singular may include the plural and vice versa. I'd like to pause for a second on the proposed order's reliance on this statute, ORS 174-127. The Administrative Procedures Act requires all statutes and rules involved in a decision to be stated in the contested case notice, and the notice here does not mention this statute. In all of the pre-hearing and post-hearing briefing on the proper interpretation of the Lux statute, ORS 174-127 was not cited or mentioned. The proposed order's reliance on this statute for its interpretation of the Lux statute was not something I could respond to until now. This presents a straightforward issue of the adequacy of the contested case notice, which the Court of Appeals has repeatedly stressed is paramount and has reversed cases where agencies rely on statutes not mentioned in the notice. The proposed order will not withstand judicial scrutiny on this point alone. The proposed order is also not likely to withstand judicial scrutiny on the merits, as the interpretation of the Lux statute is at odds with the way the Court of Appeals has previously interpreted that same statute. In Scott Inc. versus City of Ontario, the Court of Appeals determined that ORS 475C.053 creates a process for the issuance of a Lux. They held that a city or county that goes outside the bounds of the procedure created by that statute is invalid. And that's exactly what the city of Eugene did here in issuing the second Lux. In dismissing the salience of Scott Inc. to the statutory interpretation question presented in this case, the proposed order states, nothing in the court's opinion in Scott addressed whether a municipality can amend a previously issued Lux due to a loss of non-conforming legal status or other alteration of facts after the municipality issued the initial Lux. There's a couple of problems with this argument. First of all, there is no evidence that the second Lux was intended to amend the first Lux in this record. Second, to the contrary, as noted
Mr.
above.
Jacoby,
Yes, Commissioner Curran.
I just had a question for you on that. So I understand this question on the Lux now I understand the argument you're making about the modification and that it's not an amended, but are you accepting the fact that this second Lux is valid because you're ultimately asking us for more time to move it? So are you wanting to recognize that the second Lux is, you're going to essentially follow what the second Lux is deciding because there is the 1,000, and you are going to plan on relocating. Is that my understanding?
So yeah, what I proposed before going into this argument was an alternative. What was an alternative where my client will accept and it's a practical argument as well. If the commission were to grant my exceptions and reject the proposed order and instruct staff to continue processing the license under the initial Lux, my client is still going to have a dispute with the city of Eugene over whether they can operate this state. This retail location in the location proposed, and we acknowledge that's an issue, and we do have a dispute with the city of Eugene over that. But in the alternative, in order to avoid all of those, issues, avoid my arguments on the exceptions, I'm proposing that if the commission were to authorize or instruct staff to put a hold on issuance of the final order for 90 days to allow Ms. Standish to find another suitable location and propose that to staff, that could resolve the issue. So does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So back to my remarks on the proposed order's interpretation of the statute and the Court of Appeals case law. I want to point out that the Court of Appeals in the Scott Inc. case repeatedly stressed that nothing in ORS 475C.053 allows a city or county to act outside of the statutory scheme or go beyond the basic question contemplated by the statute. It strains credulity to believe that the appellate courts will reverse course as to the questions raised in this case and find the absence of a prohibition on amending or modifying a Lux as implicit statutory approval of such activity. The Court of Appeals is likely to affirm its reasoning in Scott Inc. and find that the absence of statutory authority to amend or modify a Lux as evidence of the prohibition that the proposed order argues is absent. The Commission may not overrule binding precedent of the Court of Appeals by final order in this case, which is exactly what the proposed order purports to do here. So the consideration of whether to adopt a proposed order as the final order of this commission is an exercise of discretion by each of the commissioners. In your discretion, you're free to accept, reject, or modify the proposed order as you see fit and consistent with your collective sense of equity and good conscience. The equities of this case are undisputed. Ms. Standish's application is proposed to be rejected not because of anything she did, but only because of how long it took OLCC staff to process this application. If there was any indication, on the original Lux that it was only good for 1 year, I have no doubt that OLCC staff would have prioritized this application so this license would not have been forfeited by the passage of time. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Instead, only after OLCC staff recommended approval of the application with restrictions did the City of Eugene speak up. And by that time, according to the city, it was too late. What the city did here was highly irregular and not at all contemplated by the statute that creates the Lux process. I submit that it is inequitable to hold Ms. Standish responsible for the city's error. I ask that the proposed order not be adopted and that we, primarily that we be given an opportunity to find a different location for this license in order to resolve the case. This will conclude my remarks today, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jacoby.
Chair.
Very good presentation. Go ahead. Yes, Commissioner Floyd, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Curran.
May I ask Ms. Lee to
Oh.
weigh in on the exception proposed?
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Jacoby. In response to Mr. Jacoby's exception, staff would like to clarify a few points. One, testimony at the hearings have established that Ms. Standish's application was not delayed. From the time that OLCC received the application, the licensing team worked on the application and moved it along in their process to reach a decision on whether the license should be granted. Two, we object to applicant's exception to include a finding that the applicant's application was completed as of December 9th, 2019. Throughout the hearing, as well as in the notice, OLCC stated that Ms. Standish submitted her application in December of 2019. When asked by Mr. Jacoby whether the application was completed when he processed the application, Inspector Brown testified at hearing that after being assigned the file in April of 2020, so months after December of 2019, Inspector Brown had sent both an introductory as well as a hold letter to Ms. Standish requesting additional information. However, Inspector Brown did not recall the specific information requested. Furthermore, during Mr. Jacoby's cross-examination of Denise Byram, marijuana licensed technician, Mr. Jacoby twice made reference to applicants submitting her application on December 21st, 2019, which is 12 days after the December 9th, 2019 date. Simply put, the date that the application is considered complete was never established at hearing. Three, having a Lux showing that the proposed use is not prohibited is a requirement to secure a marijuana retailer license. The Lux, as Mr. Jacoby stated, was not issued by OLCC. It was issued by the city or the county where the proposed premise is located in. In this case, applicant provided the initial Lux that was applicable when she submitted the application in December of 2019. Time passed, a second and updated Lux was issued in 2021 after the premise lost its non-conforming use. The second Lux did not cause the first Lux to expire. They were simply put, there were two Lux. One was issued in 2019, and then the second was issued in 2021. If we accept Mr. Jacoby's analysis that there can only be one Lux, The practical effect would be that once an applicant requests and receives the LUX, there can never be a second LUX. The city or the county may not issue a second LUX regardless of the changes in the circumstances. At hearing, Judge Allen stated that he, quote, doesn't agree. I don't read anything in the statute that would prohibit OLCC from receiving a document offered by the city, close quote. Judge Allen's proposed order is sound on the evidence and well-reasoned. The argument that Mr. Jacoby made here have already been considered by Judge Allen when he made his proposed final order. Staff requests that the commission adopt the proposed order as written after removing the part of the sentence that stated applicant received the 2021 LUX prior to the issuance of the notice and enter a final order of license denial. I'm also available for questions at this point.
Thank you.
Commissioner Curran.
Thank you. Mr. Jacoby, my question for you is, in reading your review, you seem to have a lot of issue with what the city of Eugene has done here. And I'm looking at this legally as a commissioner when I'm reading the statute that we must deny if there isn't, the statute requires that the LUX allow that a LUX, be submitted and that it allow for it. So when we get a LUX that says that we won't allow it, our rules say we must deny. And I don't know what authority we have to go and review the city of Eugene's, whether they had the authority to reissue this, or whether what they're doing, is within their authority or purview. It seems like with the information that we are provided and that we have received, we must deny on that issue unless, I understand that you're saying what the city of Eugene did was wrong, but I'm not sure that we have the authority to go in there and make that determination, nor do we have enough information, I would say.
I agree you don't have the authority to second guess what a city or county does with the LUX, but the commission does have the authority to determine whether a LUX is valid, whether a LUX was, and there is sufficient evidence in the record to determine the validity of the first LUX vis-a-vis the validity of the second LUX. So the statute says in subsection 1, prior to receiving a license, an applicant shall request a land use compatibility statement from the city or county that authorizes the land use. The land use compatibility statement must demonstrate that the requested license is for a land use that is allowable as a permitted or conditional use within the given zoning designation where the land is located. And the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission may not issue a license if the land use compatibility statement shows the proposed land use is prohibited in the applicable zone. What we have here is not contemplated by the statute because we don't have the land use compatibility statement. We have two. And the question is how to resolve it. And we have two that reach differing conclusions. And the question is how to resolve that conflict. And if you follow the my argument is that the statute contemplates a LUX being issued following the request of an applicant, and a LUX that was issued years later sua sponte by the city is outside of the procedure that is set up by that statute. The Court of Appeals has stated that this statute sets up a procedure, and the city did not follow that procedure here. And I'll also note there's a lot of briefing in the record that there's been some litigation about LUXes coming out of the Court of Appeals. But that's the Scott Inc. decision. Those the decision on the city's decision on a LUX can be appealed to the circuit court. It has to happen very quickly. It has to happen within 60 days. The legislature required a quick LUX process in order for OLCC to act on it. And to allow a city a year and a half down the line of an application process to abruptly change its position without any notice to the applicant so that the applicant can challenge it. This is this creates problems, and it certainly creates problems to the commission. If this was a case with just a single Lux that said it was prohibited, we wouldn't be here. But the problem is we've got two different Luxes, one of which is undisputed, was issued in the correct procedure following a request from the applicant, and one of which wasn't. One of which the applicant didn't even see it until after the proposed denial came out in the contested case proceeding. So I don't think I do think the commission has an obligation in this circumstance, in this unique circumstance, to consider whether the second Lux is a valid Lux that may be relied upon. And I argue that it's not.
So the last,
Commissioner Curran?
and I'll just make oh, thank you. My last question, I just want to make a comment. My concern with what you're arguing about this singular and using the word "the," though, is that if we approve, and not just about this case, but any type of case where there are certainly going to be changes in land use, that means we're issuing licenses where there is no valid, the Lux agreement with the city. And so then we're going to be, as an agency, that's concerning to me. But I do have a question here that I do want to ask you. And I want to make sure that I'm looking through your exception. But you didn't comment, and none of your exceptions were on the financial issue. And so that's not covered. And that was another issue that seems to be undisputed by you in the exceptions, and was another equally reasoned argument made by the administrative law judge to deny it. And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't see the exceptions to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Curran. And that's an accurate observation. There's no there is no argument that Mr. Wheeler does not have a good record of compliance. Sorry, there's no we don't make any argument that he does not have a good record of compliance, and that is a denial basis. However, that is a basis that can be overcome with the agreement to restrictions the very same restrictions that Ms. Standish agreed to for her other two licenses. So, and as I understood it, that those restrictions, what I'm asking for in the alternative, in the change of location alternative, is that there would be the same recommendation to grant with restrictions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Floyd?
I had a quick question here. Andrea, what's the commission's position regarding Mr. Jacoby's request for a 90-day pause to allow the applicant to find a suitable location? What's the position here?
So at this point in this forum, I'm not prepared to discuss that because it's technically not part of the exception. This is something that DOJ will go ahead and weigh in at this point. I think Shannon wants to answer.
Shannon, would you like to respond?
Yeah, Chair, can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Shannon O'Fallon with Oregon Department of Justice. So a proposed settlement at this juncture really isn't an exception. It is something that DOJ is going to provide some legal advice to the commission on, and it's something and we can discuss that advice once the commission is in recess.
Yeah. We have any other questions? All right.
One
Go
question.
ahead. Yes, Commissioner Miletus.
Be joining us in recess, is that correct? Okay, all right.
All right, so gotta read something here. Hold on. All right, so the committee will temporarily temporarily recess its public meeting to discuss the contested case under ORS 183.417 and is as authorized under ORS 192.690(1). We anticipate reconvening in approximately 30 minutes. We'll then return to this room to continue the open meeting. Everybody make sure you turn off your video and audio, please, so we're not in both meetings at the same time. So we're back in, and Adam, are we back in, and is this being recorded?
Chair, we are being recorded and we're good to go.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate this. Regarding the contested case hearing, we've had a chance to, the commission has had a chance to meet, and do we have any other comments or questions before we move forward? I see no other comments. I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Chair,
Commissioner Curran,
I move to adopt the proposed order in the matter of application number 101-526-695-3D for marijuana retailer license by SLC Eugene LLC as the final order as follows. 1, with the deletion of the language in the order that states that OLCC provided the LUX to the applicant prior to the issuance of the notice, and 2, including the commission's responses to the applicant's remaining exceptions.
do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Melita, second. So Commissioner Curran has moved and Commissioner Melita has seconded. Any further discussion? Adam, would you take the roll on this, please?
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Chapon Porter,
We'll get back to her.
Commissioner Hayes,
Yes.
Commissioner Melitas,
Yes.
Chair Doherty.
Yes. The motion passes as written.
Did you get
Thank you.
Kiana? Oh, okay.
So now we have, I believe we have the stipulated settlement agreements. Is that where we are next? Yes. So we're going to have to go back into recess regarding the stipulated settlement agreements for alcohol and for marijuana. So let me read the appropriate. The commission will temporarily recess its public meeting to discuss proposed stipulated settlement agreements from contested cases under ORS 183.417 and as authorized under ORS 192.690(1). We anticipate reconvening in approximately 30 minutes. Thank you. Adam, we're back in session. There's the, all right. All right, the commission has had an opportunity to discuss these. Elijah, do you want to give us a little brief on this?
Yes, so good afternoon, Chair Doherty, commissioners. My name is Elijah Nadell, case presenter from the Administrative Hearings Division, and I am presenting for your ratification 2 alcohol stipulated settlement agreements and 3 marijuana stipulated settlement agreements. I am available for questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions or comments?
We're doing the alcohol ones first, right?
We'll do the alcohol first and then we'll go to the marijuana.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair.
Commissioner Floyd.
Regarding the alcohol violation stipulated settlement agreements, I move to ratify the 2 alcohol stipulated settlement agreements as proposed by staff.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. The motion has been moved by Commissioner Floyd and seconded by Commissioner Curran. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Adam, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Chapon Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Hayes,
Yes.
Commissioner Melitas,
Yes.
Chair Doherty.
Yes. So, thank you, Adam, and the motion passes. Next, we have the marijuana stipulated settlement agreements.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment and just kind of highlight a few things, on the specifically on the Oregon's Finest and the Selena Toomey one. I just wanted to kind of state for the record, I've worked with those guys prior to this. They've been a great resource. But a bright line I've always drawn for myself is if I am at all asked to be involved in any of these, I recuse myself. I have in the past. To their credit, because they know me, they have chosen not to reach out. This is the first time seeing it. So, I just wanted to kind of state for the record that, we do draw very bright lines in terms of our interactions with industry or stakeholders or people we know. Nobody gets special treatment. It's merit based, and this is kind of a perfect illustration of that. I believe this is their first violation, but I didn't hear about this till today. So from my perspective, I think it's really important that we continue on that, and I know we always have. And so, yeah, it's I'm comfortable voting on it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I'm ready to entertain a motion then. Matt, you want to make the motion here?
I move to ratify the 3 marijuana stipulated settlement agreements.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is that Commissioner?
Second.
Javon
Yes.
Porter? Okay, that was it.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Miletus made the motion and seconded by Commissioner Javon Porter. Any further discussion? Adam, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Japong Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Hayes,
Yes.
Commissioner Miletus,
Yes.
Chair Doherty.
Yes. Thanks, Adam. The motion passes. I believe we have one. Director Prince, did you have some comments here for a brief for us?
Yeah, just can you hear me okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to make it very brief. So the only thing I wanted to brief on, first of all, I want to thank all the staff and all of our partners for hanging with us. I know it's hard to do a remote call, remote meeting, but it's a heck of a lot easier than getting everyone there with the weather we have. So thank you for everyone for their patience. I just want to note to the commission that the February session does convene, I think, at February 5th. As we talked about, there'll be an alcohol bill that will be introduced. It's House Bill 4138. For all of our alcohol partners, we do also have a scheduled meeting with them on January 23rd. This is my understanding is a tradition of OLCC to kind of convene our partners and see what they have planned for February. And I will say that the language that's currently in 4138 is going to be amended. There'll be a -1 amendment soon. So when you look at that language, don't be dismayed or concerned. We will be talking about what we'll be moving forward with at our partners meeting. As Ms. Turgeev said, we're also working with the legislature on what the legislature calls an omnibus cannabis bill. That's House Bill 4121. And we will be convening with those partners on January 30th, 2024 to go over that. And then we'll be working on the language as we talked about with our partners during the session. We will also be working with the Legislative Fiscal Office on the bonding for the warehouse and conveyance system. We're asking for the legislature to move some of the bonding from the warehouse to the conveyor system. The conveyor system estimates are higher than we anticipated. So that's just to make sure we've got our bonding sorted out for the move and the build and the conveyance system. And then last but not least, just as you all were confirmed by the Senate, we will have the 3 new commissioners who were planning to be joining us in November. They will be up for their confirmation in the Senate in this short session. So I'll be keeping Chair Doherty and you all appraised of that, but we wish them all well, and we'll be there to help squire them through the process. That's all I have. I just want to end, as I usually do, just with a thank you to our staff, especially with the ice and snow. And I wanted to say thank you also to Commissioner Porter for joining Tara and myself at the MLK breakfast on Monday. For those of you who didn't be able to make it, that's okay. We understand it was sparsely attended, but it was wonderful to be there and see the young people who were being celebrated by the scholarships that day. So thank you, Commissioner Porter.
Thank
You guys take good pictures. That was a great
And
picture.
Jesse Bonesky was there too.
Yeah, we
from
do.
Chouse. So we want
Yeah,
to thank
yeah.
Jesse for that as well. That's all I have,
Well,
Mr. Chair, and I appreciate
all
again
right.
everyone's patience on getting us through this remote. Especially want to give a shout out to Adam. Adam, thank you, and for Laura as well, as you guys have worked us through the hiccups.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anybody, any other comments? Then we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.